OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Half past 7, good morning to you. It's OTB AM. Do you know what I was doing? I was watching Shane Ahern's Instagram page. That's what's going on there. Shane Aherne, good morning to you.
There you go. Hope you found something interesting.
Kathleen McNamee, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I was deliberately looking at your page because somebody mentioned you were at the overlap last night, so I was just having to see what sort of VIP seats you got.
Right, yeah.
We're in the cheap seats.
They're grand seats. Yeah, they were very good seats, actually.
They were grand. Now he's upgrading himself now. They were very good.
They're perfect view.
Free arena.
I feel like most venues in Ireland are so small that you can't really have a bad seat in them.
True. Yeah.
Sports venues might be different, but like gig venues.
They were pretty far back, Kathleen, I won't lie to you.
No, I saw Dave from Dermot and Dave and Neil Delamere were sitting very close to me.
Oh, now look at the name drops
the names.
now. Yeah. Very good, yeah.
Of course.
Any good?
Very good night. The lads were in good form. Paul McGrath, special guest, appeared. We were all like, Jesus. The reception Paul McGrath got, understandably, was brilliant. The lads were in good form. They were down in Cork kissing the Blarney Stone in recent days. They were in Croke Park yesterday playing a bit of hurling. We had a clip up on screen in the 3 Arena last night. Gary Neville, not bad at hurling. Decent. Cricket
Well, we already know this because he, on the Borgash Energy stage,
course, yes.
tried to score the ball. Score the ball.
Score the ball.
Hit the ball into.
Welcome to Ireland's premier sports radio show, guys.
That's right. It's early. Do you remember we had the boxes up and he tried to puck it into the 3-2-1 job.
Yeah, that's true.
Big cricketer, of course.
Big cricketer back in the day. There was a couple of photos that went up on screen last night. They were in good form. They were talking about the predictions for the year. Carragher thinks Liverpool won't get top 4, which is interesting. Roy Keane also agreed and thought Spurs were going to finish out as top 4. Gary Neville softening his stance on Arsenal not being title contenders. Now he still thinks City will win the league, but certainly seems to be moving closer to Arsenal.
Is that the 8-point lead that they currently have at the top of the table?
I would say that has a small impact on that. He was also asked about funny Carragher slagging him to get off the fence on the Man United ownership, and he was saying he doesn't care whether it's the Qataris or Jim Ratcliffe or someone else. He thinks if Jim Ratcliffe buys the club with a 69% share, he wants him to encourage someone to take the other 31% and complete a full takeover, but he just wants the Glazers out, was essentially his angle last night. Yeah, a lot of boos last night when the likes of Jack Grealish and, funnily enough, Paul Gascoigne went up on stage. And
that just I don't understand.
Or up on screen, sorry. Yeah.
Why do we not?
I was like, is this another
Paul
surprise
Gascoigne
guest then?
as a nation?
Yeah, it was. I think that everyone was just leaning into that. They just talked about USA '94 and Jack Charlton, and there was maybe a bit of patriotism in the air.
Was it what percentage of the show was chatting to Roy Keane, which is really the only reason people were there?
Yeah, probably. He was probably 60-65%, I would imagine. I think Carragher and Neville realised they were probably the pawns and he was the king. And even afterwards, Keane kind of stayed behind on stage signing people's jerseys for significant portion of time, whereas Carragher and Neville kind of disappeared. So Roy kind of playing to his crowd. One of his mates, his former Cove Ramblers teammates, Handsome Bob, came up on stage at one stage, and I think he was driving him back to Cork last night. But he was a character as well. But you could just tell the relationship the two of them had, and he was saying Roy Keane, people see this Roy Keane up on stage and on their TVs, but they don't realise he's a brilliant friend. To all the lads down in Cork, he still stays close to them and comes home regularly, and he's always the.
This is what Handsome Bob was saying, or this is what Roy himself was saying?
Yeah, Handsome Bob was saying this, but no, it was really interesting just to kind of hear the different stories live. You feel like you're sitting watching them on TV, but no, it was well put together.
Are Carragher and Neville any more tolerable on stage than they are on comms and stuff? I thought when they first started, I kind of enjoyed the analysis they used to give, but I just feel like now they've just kind of retreated into these caricatures of what people expect them to be.
I know, and they're kind of leaning into that.
Yeah.
But I think an environment like last night on stage is where they're in their element. The commentary kind of grates some people a little bit. Some people love the two lads in commentary, of course, but then there's others who are like, can we just have unbiased football commentary and not Carragher or Neville screaming and shouting every time there's a goal or a chance for their respective teams.
It's even the back and forth that they have on Twitter. Like one of them will say something and the other one will quote tweet it, and then the other one will quote tweet them again. And I'm like, lads, this is what WhatsApp was invented for. Like, we don't all need to see your conversations.
Yeah. A couple of the biggest cheers tonight, of course, were Carragher slagging United fans for the 7-0 recently, and the Liverpool fans leaned into that one.
I'd say the bants was off the charts.
Oh, Valencia was brought up a number of times, and Neville tried to defend himself and talk about his win ratio not being as bad as people realised, 35%, and they brought up on screen, I think Roy's at Ipswich was 34% or something, 1% less, but at Sunderland he was like 42%. So there's a lot of clutching at straws and a bit of hashtag banter, but a lot of off the ball fans there last night as well.
Oh, as in you were getting a lot of attention?
Well, I'd say there was a lot of... I'd say that in the comments now, if there's anyone who was there last night, let us know what you thought, but certainly there was a crossover.
Did you hear people coming up to you? Do you know what, Kathleen? I was out last Saturday after the Ireland match.
Yeah.
The place, I don't know if anybody else saw, but the place was off the chart. The buzz around town was unreal, I have to say. It's the sort of city that gets taken over by a game like that, in a way that, I think if you're in London or you're in Paris and that sort of thing happens, it tends to just soak into it, whereas it feels like it permeates the personality of the town for that night. Anyway, this fella came up to me at some point and he was like, "Oh, OTB AM," and he was like, big fan. Redmond from Cavan, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Redmond,
but you've never met a bigger Shane Aherne fan.
Oh,
really?
Oh, honestly.
And a Cavan man too.
Yeah, exactly. And he was definitely sort of, despite
big praise
himself,
there, Shane.
he was like, I shouldn't like this guy, but what's not to like?
Well, see, I've praised Cavan a couple of times on the show. So keep your enemies close and all that stuff. But no, I think I've had some very nice words about Cavan. So
well, I don't know. He wasn't coming from any sort of sycophantic thing here.
Right,
it was he just enjoys you.
Shout out to Redmond. This morning.
What? So you had a lot of people coming up to you last night. That's obviously what you were
there's a few off the ball fans for sure. But it was a breeding ground for off the ball fans. To be fair, I mean you're walking in and it was like I'd say it was 80-85% male, but there was a good female percentage there as well. It was a nice mix. It was almost like a night out for a lot of people. I felt people were dressed up and kind of going and entertain me kind of thing.
Yeah. I always find those crowds kind of interesting because I've gone to quite a few football live shows, and generally I'm one of the 10% of women in there, and sometimes it's 5% girls who've gone along with their boyfriends or their husbands, and you see them sitting there not all that interested, and the other 5% are actually there and interested. And I don't know, some of those crowds I've always found really uncomfortable to be in. I remember I went to see one particular podcast in Dublin in Liberty Hall, and there was a couple of guys sitting beside me, and they actually turned around and apologised to me halfway through it because they were like, "We're so sorry you have to sit through this." I did go by myself, so I didn't have anyone else there to.
And what was the stuff coming from the stage or from the floor?
It was kind of a mixture. The lads on the stage were kind of feeding off what was going on in the crowd, and it was just real laddish sort of banter, and everyone getting a little bit too drunk and kind of shouting up things that you don't really want to hear. So I've always been reluctant since then to go to these things by myself, which is what I loved about Kelly Cates or someone like that hosting last night, because I think it changes the whole dynamic.
Definitely, it's a good point.
And she's a really good broadcaster as well.
She was in charge last night, which was brilliant to see. They had her and Josh Denzel, and there probably wasn't a need for maybe, if I had one criticism,
but I think that's the format, isn't it? That's the gig.
I guess. But she was well able to kind of navigate the whole thing, and there were things being shouted up on stage, but it was all in good humour, and USA 94 came up, a team photo popped up on screen, and Roy was reminiscing about that team, and he was like, well, at least we had balls and bibs. It's not so subtle hint at Saipan. But then Josh Denzel might move on then, whereas everyone's
come on now,
come on, lean into that. So there was a couple of moments of that.
Has that dynamic changed, Kathleen, do you think, over the last few years, or is it how long ago was that?
That was about 3 years ago now.
Okay.
I don't know. It actually put me off kind of going to those sort of shows. I've been to a few off the ball ones, which I've really enjoyed, and I'm not just saying that because I am employed by Off the Ball.
I'm bringing a sigh of relief there, but I mean, it is. I think it's just fair enough observation when you get.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and it's the same thing that sometimes you get when you walk into a stadium as well. And I don't get it as much, obviously, when I go to women's matches, but I've walked into a lot of stadiums by myself and never felt particularly comfortable. So I kind of always make sure I go to these things with someone else, and I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't have to have that second thought in my head. You know, that you just go and enjoy the night and it'd be a bit of crack or whatever. Yeah, I don't know if it has changed. I would be surprised if it has.
That's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, and I was surprised. I'm not going to say what the podcast was, but I was actually kind of surprised when I went that it was that sort of atmosphere, because when you listen to it, it would have been one of the ones that was kind of vaguely progressive in terms of getting like female voices on the podcast early days. It was progressive in terms of actually covering women's football before a lot of other places were doing it. So I was like, are they playing into what they expect a Dublin crowd to be, or is this just how they are normally? I don't know. It was interesting.
Mark Dunning says he was at the overlap last night. Very enjoyable. Biggest ovation was definitely for Paul McGrath.
Yeah,
needless to say, that's
it's funny. Like, McGrath clearly remembers his Villa days more passionately than his Man United days. I think Alex Ferguson pushing him out the door came up a couple of times, and I think he blamed the whole partying in Manchester on Norman Whiteside massively. Whiteside's name came up a couple of times. He's like, well,
Fergie did.
No, McGrath was like, I was only up to bother because Norman was bringing me out. You know,
they're still very good buds.
Yeah.
If the as Kathleen says, they don't tend to keep it to WhatsApp. It's very visible on social.
Yeah, 100%. No, but it was brilliant. Like, it was just good, a nice event to get. Like, it's just something to do in a midweek night in Dublin, you know. But yeah, I could,
especially during an international break after the Grand Slam has happened.
Exactly. And it's a perfect opportunity for them, because you've got such a mix of United and Liverpool fans and people who are just Neville or Keane fans or Carragher fans as well. So no, definitely a nice night.
Darragh O'Toole suggesting that I was checking for an invite to Gary Ringrose's gaff. It does seem
that
as
looked like a party.
When I saw that the first time, I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, you don't see that stuff too often, and now I've seen it like a million times because it's just popping up all over the place.
I love every time it comes up though, I rewatch it because I feel like I see something different. You know, you pick out a different player. Or I was slightly disappointed in Mac Hansen that he is the sort of player that like wears the jumper around his shoulders tied like that. I was like, Mac, I thought you were better.
Well, I think when you're coming from an Australian background, you see, it's just to represent a whole different.
I think on day 3 or 4 of
system.
drinking, you don't care what you look like. You probably haven't dressed yourself.
Peter O'Mahony in the trackie, and it's like
I did like the way they were all in tracksuits, but like the Leinster lads were in like slightly fancier hoodies. They were like different coloured hoodies, and then Ross Byrne and Peter O'Mahony coming up at the back in just like their pure black, like Adidas, Nike, whatever it was, tracksuits.
These Leinster lads are a bit posher.
Peter O'Mahony seemed to be revelling in the fact that he was partying in South Dublin. Like, it was like, whoa, what am I? Come on, kid.
Someone who said to him as he was walking in the door, "This is South Dublin, Peter, welcome."
Yeah. Oh yeah, was that Gary Ringrose's father? Was that what's going on there? I mean, imagine Ringroses who were at home, like sort of enjoying the few days, and nice quiet few days.
What time was this?
There's the bell. I wonder, is that what's happening?
It was very early, was it?
I don't know. It was daytime.
It was still bright outside. Yeah.
There was also some old lad out at the gate of the house where the minibus had pulled in, and obviously couldn't believe his luck that like all these steaming Irish players had just topped. He was like, well, what's going on here? Do keep the comments coming into us. A few in about the Argentina homecoming last night. That seemed like a very emotional. They all seem to get World Cups. I don't know, were they like little paper World Cups that everybody gets to take one home, or they actually produce these things, or do players get them? Is this something that happens? I didn't know.
No, I wasn't aware. Did you see the video of Messi coming out of the restaurant in Buenos Aires during the week?
5,000 people outside.
Oh my Jesus, he was bombarded before he even
left. I thought you were going to say Owen Sheehan coming out after him. Yeah, lads, one of those great people. Night.
Yeah, exactly. That was mad stuff. But it's like to be expected. He's gone from, I guess, semi-god to god now status in Argentina, which is fair.
I see. Wayne Rooney was busy on Twitter himself last night with congratulating Harry Kane and having passed his goal scoring record for England.
You know, this really pained me last night when Harry Kane passed it, because Ellen White was so close last summer to doing it. She was like 3 goals off, and she had so many opportunities to surpass it, and she didn't do it. And obviously she's retired now and also welcoming a baby, so congratulations to her. But like, I was just like, oh, so close.
Yeah, I know.
It would have been great.
It must be so frustrating when you retire that close to a figure. You're like,
Well, you think about it as well in the context of Six Nations, and we'll talk to Ronan O'Gara's coming on with us in a few minutes' time. But the Sexton kick, I mean, it's his last Six Nations game. Just could have missed a couple where it wasn't really important a bit earlier in his career, and it could have held on to that for a while. I'm sure he's not going to say that to us this morning. But
I thought you were going to say they should have stopped the game and had a ceremony and
well,
there
was in like a LeBron James sort of a when they stopped the match.
was just
that'd be the equivalent, wouldn't it? If the game had stopped against England and everybody had
like when we had the conversation on the show, Ger was like, I think it's totally right that they stopped the game for him and that they had this big ceremony on court. And Shane, you were very anti it, and I was also the same.
It's a farcical suggestion by Ger, I have to say. Yeah. I know he's not here to defend himself, but Jesus.
Well, all the more reason to say it.
Yeah, exactly. Lean in. No, ridiculous stuff. Don't be stopping a match. Just get on with it.
But there was a standing ovation for Sexton at that time.
For a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
And then they just
but like that's all you need as well. Like you have your celebrations at the end of the game. I don't understand why you would ever stop a sporting event, make everyone else sit there and like watch as you get all your photos taken and you're standing there with your, like, imagine if Sexton brought out his kids in the middle of the pitch,
6-3 down.
Yeah, and everyone had to stand there and watch what was happening.
He kicks a penalty to go 6-3 down, and they just stop the match.
But I think the LeBron James thing, like people, we are gathered here today to celebrate LeBron James passing the scoring thing. Whereas with Sexton, it was like it was the fourth or fifth biggest storyline, obviously, including his own final Six Nations game there. Yeah. But yeah, fair play to Wayne Rooney. Sending out the congratulations. Like, I just can't feel as if, and you'll have a biased view on this, Kathleen, I appreciate, but I can't ever feel as if I can warm to Harry Kane in the same way that I did with Rooney. And maybe that was just a generational thing, I'm not sure. Rooney had a bit of the rogue about him, overstepped the line.
I feel like a lot of people have that about Harry Kane though. Like, I don't know, is it his personality necessarily, because he's not a character really. He doesn't have, he's not a big star. He's a big star, but he doesn't have a big sort of platform where he talks out about a lot of things, or he does a lot of things in general. And even like you're reading the papers today, you would kind of expect there to be a bit more about Harry Kane. True, and like, there's no essays from people being like, Harry Kane is the greatest footballer of this generation and we're so lucky to have him and these are all the reasons why he's amazing. It's all very cold and factual about what he's actually done.
Yeah, he's a bit vanilla, he's a bit wooden, and like, he, for example, had an unbelievable opportunity as England captain at the World Cup to wear the armband and actually make a stand on something in Qatar and didn't. And I like, that was the most disappointed I've ever been in a footballer. I think I was like, this, you have
fair point, and spoke a really good game, but just never backed it up.
Walk the walk, man. Yeah. Now, as a footballer, I think he deserves more respect. People kind of point to, he scored 4 against San Marino one time, and that was his 18th penalty, I think, out of all those goals for England last night. So people point to all these things, but the fact is he's England's top goal scorer of all time now, and his goals per game ratio, I think, is better than Rooney, better than Bobby Charlton.
Well, he got there 39 games before Rooney,
so you have to respect that. Like, I mean, like, I think Jimmy Greaves' record was maybe better goals per game, but like, to score that many goals for your country, like, I think he scored minutes into his England debut or seconds into his England debut against Lithuania years ago.
I've never met an English fan either though who talks about him all that warmly, or like, there's a lot of other players on the team that they seem a lot more fond of rather than him, and I wonder what it is, because like, Rooney was definitely a far more controversial character, especially in his earlier days, but there still seams to be a fondness there for him.
Maybe it was because of that,
yeah,
like,
maybe
people love a story arc, and with Kane it's just like zoop, and he's like big, and he'd be a great man for a bit of football speak, like, I'm sure he's a real person behind the facade, but like, everything you hear from him is just stock answer 4-4-2.
Maybe he'll be great when he retires and goes into media possibly and becomes interesting, and maybe there's an interesting guy there behind it, but maybe that's what it takes to be a top footballer, to be a top goal scorer for your country. You need to be a little bit boring and concentrate on the football. Each to their own. I guess he's just not a character, so we're never going to look at him like we do with Wayne Rooney.
Shay Geelong Cats, and the clue about this comment is in the name on YouTube, says they did the same in the AFL with Buddy Franklin last year when he scored his 1,000th goal. Thousands of people invaded the pitch and the game had to be stopped. Not planned, just couldn't be stopped.
Well, I see, if it's unplanned.
Well, I mean, imagine thousands of people jumping on the Aviva pitch. I mean, the game wouldn't have just stopped. The game would have been called off.
Yeah, it's
something
true.
like that. I almost don't mind as much. Like, obviously, health and safety and all that sort of crack, but that's like spontaneous. It's not. I don't know. It just, the LeBron stuff just felt really like commercial, or it didn't feel like it was for him or for the team. It felt like it was for the photos. And
it depends on there was a moment where, this is the moment on a Friday where I mentioned Ronnie O'Sullivan's name.
It won't be the last this morning.
Take your drink if you had Ronnie O'Sullivan for 7:48 a.m. But he hit his 1,000th century a couple of years ago, and it was in a deciding frame against Neil Robertson. But when he hit the ball that went in that took him to 100 points. That break, the break was still not over, but he did stop for a minute, and everyone stood up and applauded, and he kind of waved to the crowd and smiled and took it in for maybe all of 15
different
seconds.
Though, that's different.
But then he finished the break and got on with it.
And it's also different.
Yeah, it's different
because there's like 10 people in the stadium.
There was more than 10 people there, Adrian.
And also, it's not like he's not impacting on anybody else but himself.
What do you mean?
Like, if Sexton has to go around and take the applause, or LeBron does, or old Buddy Franklin here, like there's another 30 people on the 11 to 30 people on the pitch who's impact, who are impacted by this. Like, if you're Manu Tuilagi, you're like, grand, let's get on with the game. This is bullshit. Let's get on with it. Whereas he's just got his opponent who's probably like, nah, fair enough. Yeah.
So if a golfer hits a hole in one, you don't.
They stop. They take the applause. There's no panic. Like it's
no rush.
No rush. Nobody's in a panic anyway. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to think of a good example to diminish your argument, but doing it live on air is not easy.
We'll go back to that. Yeah. A reminder, by the way, here's what's coming up at the show between now and 10 for you this morning. Busy old show. As I mentioned, we've Ronan and Gara standing by. He's going to chat to us in a couple of minutes' time. Plenty to get stuck into it, Rog. Obviously, first time we've had him on since the Grand Slam. Shebahn Aherne, football writer, will join us after that. We're going to chat about a really interesting weekend in the Women's Super League that is just after 8 this morning. Alan Quinlan is going to look ahead to the Women's Six Nations first weekend there, as well as talk about the under-20s in a little bit more detail and as to exactly where those players are going to go now that that's wrapped up. We'll have the Friday Firepit for you at just before 9 this morning. We've been chatting with Kevin Kilbane. He touches on loads. Obviously, it's primarily a look ahead to Monday night and the game against France, and very much feeling, spoiler alert, very much feeling Seamus Coleman needs to start that, and Hugo Keenan in conversation with Nathan as well from during the week. So that's what's coming up. We've loads of really interesting Firepit topics, Kathleen, I'm sure.
Oh yes, we definitely do.
As usual.
Not to spoil anything.
I love spoil. I love spoil.
I had a Firepit fan at the Aviva come up to me and say,
"Oh really?
I love the Firepit."
Because he gets a bit of hate in the comments on YouTube.
Yeah. Continue. We will.
We've noticed that Shane has again taken the opportunity to tell us that people have recognised him on the street.
No, recognised the Firepit. This was the Firepit. This was nothing.
But they recognised you enough to actually come up to you and say, "Oh, you're Shane Hanlon."
I was just a vessel that helped, bring the Firepit to everyone's lives.
Yeah, the only time I've had people come up to me once that recognised me from the show, and it was a very strange experience. I was a bit like, oh, am I going to be like walking around Dublin randomly now and other people are going to come up? It hasn't happened, but the people that they complimented was Aisling O'Reilly. Said she's a great reporter, which she is, and actually you, Shane.
There you go. A lot of Hannah
John Duggan gets a lot of love, rightfully, I think.
There'll be more of that. Kathleen, thanks a million for the minute. We'll talk to you in a little while. It is 7:52. You are watching OTB AM, and we're live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition is available now. Ronan and Gara, good morning to you.
Morning, team. How are we?
Flying it. How are you keeping?
Good, yeah. Thank you. Back into top 14 this week, so busier week than an average Six Nations week. So back to reality. Game tomorrow night in Bordeaux. So had a good training week and trained this afternoon and hopefully get on the bus tomorrow. But there's a lot of manifestations, a lot of protests in France. So hopefully we'll be able to get to Bordeaux by bus tomorrow. That's the short-term goal.
Right, I can imagine that's probably a weekly
protest in France.
Exactly, yeah, a weekly thing to have to get around in some form or another. Come here, what you watched the game obviously last weekend. Where did you watch it?
I watched it at home in France.
What happens when Sexton stands up and he knocks it over and the record is gone? At that exact minute, what are you doing?
Very little, having a cup of tea and eating chocolate on the couch.
Are you like that?
A very natural process. I think it's interesting, the reactions of it's a little bit like your previous conversation. Everyone's reaction is a little bit different, and some people expect you, I suppose, to be react differently, but it was always going to happen once Johnny continued playing, so if you can't get your head around that, you have an issue, so it was great. There was some good shots of Laura and the kids in the crowd. She's a lovely girl, and she's been with Johnny through it all. I understand the sacrifices that Jess has put into my career for Laura would be very much the same, because it wasn't all smooth sailing for Johnny. I think you got to remember that and how we started, and it's a great story for resilience. But coming back to your question, I was on the couch watching it, and I think there's been a big emphasis obviously on individual records, but as Johnny rightly said, it was about winning a Grand Slam. He was captain of that team, and I think with a little bit of hindsight, they won it with a few gears to spare, and that's a sign of a great team, that they find a way to win. And it highlights, I suppose, the efficiency and the craft of Andy Farrell. He's created a genuinely impressive environment.
The last 2 weeks, because we've chatted obviously a fair bit about Sexton getting the record and surpassing you in it, like, it's been an amazing 2 weeks. I think it's been funny sort of watching different people's reaction. I saw Shane Horgan during the week saying that you'd be spitting about it, but like, it's been amazing 2 weeks to remind people that you scored a stupid amount of points in the Six Nations. What sort of feelings has it brought up for you over the last couple of weeks? Has it been like a time for reflection, or how have you felt about the whole thing?
I haven't really. I struggle with a lot of people's mentalities about looking back. That's what I did as a player. I'm 10 years coaching now. So it seems like a different lifetime, and that's not an easy answer. I didn't hear Shane Horgan's comments that maybe.
He, by the way, I don't want to misrepresent him. It could have been. I read them and I didn't see them, and it could have been that they were in jest as well.
Yeah, exactly. But Shaggy's a good guy. There's no doubt about that. I played with him, and he would have played with Johnny as well. So he'd have be a good judge in both characters. That's for sure. When I was playing, that was my effort. That was it posted. And that's something you can't change. I am to this day extremely proud of that. There's no getting away from that. There's 2 Irish people at the minute that are top of the Six Nations points. Whenever that became such a big story, I'm not too sure. It wasn't a big story in my day. I had no idea what I finished with. There was never any talk about it. Nowadays, there's obviously, we're in the social media age where everything is relevant of a great story. Yet, the bigger story here is that another competitor is coming along, or a 30-year-old Owen Farrell is waiting in the wings to just come along and set an even better record. That's how sport works. That's the ruthlessness of it, and that's why I think when you're that competitor, you enjoy it. For me, I posted my figures are as a player, wonderful memories as a player, but I made a kind of a conviction to myself that stop talking about yourself as a player, what you did in the past. It's now, for example, Johnny Sexton's time, Gary Ringrose time, Caelan Darcy's time, Dan Sheehan's time, all these players that need to enjoy what we got in the green jersey or red jersey. And now I'm coaching, and now you're trying to get the best out of people, because you understand, I think, what good coaches can give to important groups.
Does it make you nostalgic for the celebrations, Ronan? Because even thinking back to 2009, because I don't know if you've seen the clip of Gary Ringrose's house. I think he wasn't quite keen on the fourth day of drinking, and the lads all one by one come out of a minibus and pile into his parents' house. A lot of them, let's say the full squad. Peter O'Mahony was there as well. I don't know what time of the day or night it was, but it was certainly during the day. But like, it was clearly, you were just thinking that, let the lads at it, they're celebrating, they're enjoying themselves. But did it make you think of the celebrations back in 2009?
Yeah, exactly, and that's that's probably so important to people that they do celebrate it and they do enjoy the time, because some people are very quick to move on. If it's worthwhile, you shouldn't be able to move on that quickly. I can remember, the first 2 days are probably everyone's in a rush to enjoy the celebrations. Day 3 and 4 is when you can sit down and relax and probably get into the finer detail of what happened in the game with your teammates and how much it means to you and how much you care for them. And I think that's still very important nowadays, because it's obviously very difficult to do that in public. And it was very nice of the Ringrose parents to put on a very good venue for their son and teammates to celebrate.
I'd say they had no choice. I'd say the father was looking at it going, oh, Jesus. What are we going to do?
I don't know. They didn't seem to be protesting too much in the clips I saw.
There was some, I was saying earlier on, there was some outlet at the gate who I'd say was just going, what is happening here? The buses pulled up and all these like...
but you can see from that it's very, you know what I mean? That's why people ask, how is it difficult to connect with Leinster and Munster players when you play for Ireland? And when there's a clip that just shows how easy it is and how important it is that they spend time and they appreciate each other's company, and it's the environment Farrell has created that, it's great. I don't know. If it was the 4th day, that's Tuesday of this week, is it?
I think it must have been.
Could have been, yeah, or even, could have been Wednesday?
Could have been Wednesday, yeah, possibly. Ash.
Okay, great, because usually we're very good at adding on arms and legs to stories, but if it was genuinely the 4th day, there's still a lot of men standing in good shape.
Fair play. It's not easy. No.
One man who took a little bit of time out, and it might have been Tuesday actually, he was on the Good, Bad and the Rugby podcast, I don't know if you saw it, with Johnny Sexton, and he was chatting about coming off the pitch. He obviously come off a bit early with the groin injury, and we'll see how all that plays out obviously over the next few weeks and maybe months even, but it struck me, his words about you, I don't know if you've seen it, but really lovely words about you and how you would come into his head as he came off the pitch, and obviously the whole stadium stood up to give him a round of applause. They understood the moment, and he had at that moment in his head, you in his mind, thinking that he was, you never got that moment in an Ireland jersey, which we've spoken about before, I know, but his thoughts for you at that moment I thought were really lovely.
Yeah, he's a good guy, I think he's misunderstood still by a lot of people, but I spent 2 years in racing when he was very, very different to who he is now, and that would have been a brilliant learning experience from him, but it's off the pitch you kind of, I suppose, get to know the guy off the pitch. He's very interesting and very very funny actually, but very deep person. I didn't see any of that, but yeah, Johnny and I have obviously seen everything together, so it's doesn't surprise me. He's a man of integrity. So, but I didn't get it because I didn't deserve it. That's the bottom line. If you finish like I did and perform like I did in my game against Scotland, then there's ample evidence to say that this guy shouldn't get another go, and that's what happens in top flight sport. I didn't get another go. Could I kicked on for another season or two after the way I played probably Munster against Claremont in the semi-final? Potentially, but it just didn't enter my head. I wasn't, I suppose, trying to eke out any more other points or individual records, anything like that. It was always what's best for the team. I felt in the spur of the moment in that game against Claremont in Montpellier, the semi-final, that... my race has ran. I've given it everything. I've had the best time in this jersey and another jersey. So get out when you feel it's time. And I've always been a massive fan of trusting my instincts. Still to this day, when you're coaching and when you need split-second decisions to implement something. That's always my go-to, trusting my instincts. So that was my feeling in that day, and I don't think I would change anything with hindsight.
Yeah, which isn't to say that the fans wouldn't have wanted to have done for you what they did for Sexton, of course.
Yeah, of course, and Irish people are brilliant fans, and people will kind of say, oh, geez, there's enough about Johnny now and poor. That isn't the way at all I feel. I feel very, very grateful, and I need to reiterate that. It was... whatever they're talking about me as a legend as a player, Johnny as a legend as a player. Yeah, I think I'm entitled to say that, and that sounds quite arrogant potentially, but I don't mean it like that. I've really, really enjoyed those days as playing, but it's so closed in my book. My mind now is driven to performing as a coach, and with a coach, I think you see things very, very differently, because when you're that player you have to be incredibly selfish, but I think when you're the coach, you just got to see bigger picture on what's best for the team.
Yeah, I can't help but feeling there's like it's a little bit of a shame almost in some way, Ronan, that you don't, because you do hear players at times, obviously during the playing career, saying I can't think about that now, that'll be for when I retire. But you obviously transitioned so quickly into coaching, and you almost feel it sounds like that would detract a little bit from what you're doing with the day job, to be luxuriating too much in that, which to me feels, given the career you had, feels like a shame almost.
No, not at all. The opposite, I think, Adrian. I think I realise what I've done, but for other people to probably reflect upon, my driver is getting the best out of myself. I think I did that. Now it's to get the best out of a team. It's 10 years ago. Everything goes on. Stop talking about the past. Get on with what you're doing.
Funny when you say that, Ronan, on that, like, do you rest uncomfortably with the legends tag? Like, anytime someone calls Roy Keane a legend in person, you can see his face almost squirm and get uncomfortable. I remember interviewing a guy once called Gene Cernan. He was the last man to walk on the moon. He was an astronaut in the Apollo program, and I remember him saying to me, people look at me differently to how I look at myself. And I found that was something with legends in sport as well, is something similar, that all of us and rugby fans and sports fans generally will look at you much differently than you think about yourself. Like, that legends tag, is that a tough thing for you to almost listen to?
No, because I don't live in Ireland, you know, and it's very warming and welcoming when you come back through Dublin Airport, or you walk the streets of Dublin. You kind of, people look at you and they're kind of have a double take, and is that him? And then, why Raj? And you're like, whoa, I forgot this, because there's none of that in my daily life over here. You got to understand that. There hasn't been for 10 years. So I think Irish people are known for their warmth, and then you go back in, dip in whenever it is, a few times a year, and you can feel that, and that's very important too, because Jess says to me, well, it would be worse if they thought you were a bollocks.
Fair point.
I'm sure there's plenty of people, I'm sure the Leinster fans particularly at times, Ronan, definitely felt that.
But even in the build up to last year's final, it never crossed the line of lack of respect, and I think that's very, very important. You know, there was never, maybe I didn't hear it, but I never got the impression that there was a bad feeling. I think there was a begrudging respect for potentially what I was doing with La Rochelle, but there was never that malicious intent to maybe have a go at me.
Yeah, no,
I'd
say it was always that, even including in your playing days. Just one last one on Sexton. What, obviously nearing the end, and maybe the groin injury that he limped off with that may keep him out now for the next while, is the clearest indicator or clearest answer to this question. But like, he does seem to be like a fine wine in that he is certainly not getting any worse as he gets older. Obviously we're talking about, and all indications are that he hangs up the boots after the World Cup. Is there any case for a close confidant getting on the phone to him and saying, listen, you know, he looks like he could play on?
Yeah, but I suppose playing, it all depends what he wants to play on for and what his why is. That's the starting point for me. Like, once you establish what your why is, and you can make a plan together. But, you know what I mean? I think it'll either go one or two ways the next 6 months, and then he has a decision to make. If it's the ending that everyone wants, then I don't think he has any decision. Why would he play on? If it isn't, then he maybe has a decision. But he's in a position of strength. He's enjoying his rugby. He's a huge asset to the Irish and the Leinster team. But you got to remember that at that level it takes its toll, and there will be a day when, or a month when, he'll have to decide whether his body can do it.
Yeah. And maybe they win the World Cup, hopefully, and then that decision just becomes really clear.
Well, that's exactly what I said, you know what I mean? There's satisfaction, internal satisfaction, not external satisfaction, internal satisfaction for the rest of his life. He does what he wants to do on his terms, and that's the beauty of the sport we play.
You must be delighted for Scott Robertson.
Yeah, I am. I'm delighted because he's a great guy. He's someone that had a huge impact on me and continued to have. Just love his personality, love what he represents, love the way he sees the world, love the way he sees rugby, and great news, because I was getting a little bit worried with what I was hearing, and I just think it's great. I think once he got the chance to present his vision in front of the board, there was only ever going to be one winner, because he can transform a room, and I'd say he can transform a team, and I suppose it's good for all the other international coaches that he isn't taken over before a World Cup.
What were you hearing that was getting you worried?
I just that they were liking the combination of Jamie Joseph and Tony Brown working wonders with Japan, and obviously the Kathleen he'd be working with New Zealand would be better. So that was always something that was going to be a big threat. But I think now they've back to Razor and his team, whoever that will be, because there's a lot of good coaches and he has a lot of good connections, and so it'll be really interesting to see the team he puts together.
When you mentioned good management combos, it was funny. I don't know if you saw, Brian O'Driscoll was on with us on Off the Ball this week, and he was talking about yourself and Paul O'Connell and your respective, I guess, coaching / managerial styles, and he was saying everyone will be like Rog and Paulie together. And this is down the line in terms of a future hypothetical Irish coaching ticket. I don't see it. Both are very strong in their own right. Not that I necessarily know their styles or their ways, but something tells me that I'm not entirely sure this is a combination that we will see. Like, it was an interesting thought. He was essentially saying that you're, as much as everyone would love that dream ticket down the line, Ronan, that you're both strong enough in your own right now to kind of stand on your own 2 feet.
No, I think it has nothing to do with that from my point of view. It depends on putting two good brains together. I think can be very, very powerful. So titles don't interest me. It's working relationships. It's working with people that you can trust. That is very important. So I mean, there's more than ample room in the Irish game or any international game for 2, 4, 6 people, depending on how you want to build a management team. So there's different ways of looking at it, obviously, but in terms of working with Paul, because he's strong and I'm strong, then it becomes doubly strong.
So you're telling us there's a chance?
There's always a chance, because you want to work with the best people, you want to challenge yourself with the best people, you want to get the best out of the best people, you want to enjoy what you're doing. Paul O'Connell is a great friend, and he knows a thing or two about rugby, so why wouldn't you work with Paul O'Connell?
Brilliant. Thanks, Million, for chatting to us over the last 20 minutes. It was interesting stuff, as always, Million. Lines we didn't get to, but we'll chat to you, on. Good luck tomorrow.
See you guys. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers, Ron. Thanks a lot. And a lot of love coming in on the comments as well. Juve Power saying, I think Sexton's reference to Rog on the GBR pod was a touch of class, and plenty more as well besides, and we'll get to those comments in a little bit. Kathleen is back with us, and we're going to talk football now. Delighted to say Shebahn Aherne, football writer, is on the line. Morning, Shebahn.
Good morning, troops. How are we? You well?
We're great, and we're a little bit behind time, so apologies on that, but
good.
We've loads to get to. What a weekend. We might start with tonight's game, the Merseyside Derby, and the chat around that they could outstrip the 27,000 that turned up for the Anfield leg last year, with maybe even 30,000 tonight. There'll be no Niamh Fahey, obviously. Will be a little bit of other Irish interest, obviously, on the other side. But in terms of a result, do you expect it to be the same as it was at Anfield, or how do you expect it to pan out?
Do you know what? Everton have been decent this season. Now, the last few weeks, things have started to dip ever so slightly. But what I'm most looking forward to is one of, this being the first game to kick off women's football weekend, to see how this will go second time round, because it was such a, at Anfield, the way it happened the first time round was a bit of a shock. So Everton, I think, will be cooking with gas this time round. And as the season's gone on, they've just progressed. They've become more of a gelled one team. But like I say, over the last couple of weeks, I would say it started to dip off slightly. So I'll be interested to see how that one goes. But big night at Goodison Park, a Friday night there. It's not a bad way to kick off women's football weekend.
Yeah, and I saw the Liverpool manager, with a little bit of reverse psychology going on. He said that they were that his own team obviously were frozen. They looked scared. The occasion got the better of us, and he was saying all that sort of in the context that I think Everton, all their fans at home, this could be them this weekend.
Listen, they're a solid team. They are solid, but Brian Sorensen's a good manager. He's, and the way Everton are this season to what they were last season is night and day. Even the way you can see the communication on the pitch is night and day to last season. I heard from a credible source that last season that dressing room was an awful place to be, and it's very, very different this time round. So credit to the job that Brian Sorensen's done. It's not an easy place to go, and he's got them playing better, but Liverpool quietly going about their business as well, picking up the odd points here and there. Matt Beard's experienced in this league, but going away to Goodison Park will be a right test for Liverpool.
Shebahn, do you think Everton might suffer a little bit, because obviously they've taken in a lot of young players? They have a couple of players on loan who are going to go back to bigger clubs afterwards. Like, are they building enough at this stage that they're going to be able to retain those players and keep them, or else attract similar sort of levels of players back into the club?
That's a good question. I mean, I think so. I think because of the job that's been done this season, you can view Everton through a different lens as you did last season. I was set, actually coming into this season, I said I wouldn't be surprised if Everton were relegated because of the way that they did play and the atmosphere there last year. But you're right, the young players that they've got, I mean, they've got the most expensive European player in history in Hannah Benison, who is just wonderful to watch. You know, young Jess Park there as well. Like Luna says, she's going to go back to Manchester City. So many young, talented players, the young twins as well. I've enjoyed watching them, I have to say. I think they're a promising bunch. Can he hold on to them? I think if they can just maintain mid-table, that's good. You know, that will be a decent season for Everton based on what they did last season.
North London Derby tomorrow afternoon, and exactly I'm sort of tempted to ask you the same question in terms of the expected result out of it, but we'll hold on that for a second. Good performance, whatever about the result from Arsenal during the week in Munich, that might be enough for them now. It might give them enough belief, and Emma Byrne was saying during the week that they can win the Champions League, and it should nearly be the priority for them.
I mean, do you know what? See, Emma Byrne, I love that. She was part of that team. She's been around for so much time. She's got so much experience. She knows this Arsenal team so well. You know, now living over here and turning on the commentaries, Emma Byrne is such a part of the WSL once again. I look at this Arsenal team now and I said, yes, at the start of the season, Arsenal can win the Champions League. I didn't, with Beth Mead and Viviana Miedema, and their ACL injuries and what they've gone through, I think they've missed. They're just not the same. They are not the same. You can't blame them for that. You've got to give them that injury grace. But I watched the Bayern game the other night and I was so frustrated by it. You know, I was just like, oh, come on, you know, in front of goal. I feel that Arsenal had been so wasteful in that game, and it was a good performance. You know, I think the return leg at the Emirates on Wednesday I'll be going to. I think Arsenal can comfortably beat Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich are a solid squad, and the Germans, as we know, are just so efficient. But I look at that Arsenal side and I go, they should be able to get the job done, but there's something they're lacking. We know in front of goal, Stina Blackstenius has struggled. She's hit a bit of form recently. They've brought in Jodie Taylor. Obviously, Jodie can't play in the Champions League. But I just think in front of goal, I don't know if we could see Caitlin Ford maybe moving up there a little bit more, take the striker position, because that was what was just missing. You know, on Wednesday night was a goal from Caitlin Ford. I thought she had it in her. 10 minutes to go, I was going, Caitlin will score, this will happen, and they couldn't find the back of the net. So they've got a job to do on Wednesday, but I think Arsenal have enough to get over the line. But you look at the other teams that then they've to face, and without Viviana Miedema and Beth Mead, your key goal scorers, I think Arsenal could struggle.
Do the WSL teams play with a little bit of fear in the Champions League in recent years, do you think, Shebahn? It's a lot of pressure, of course, and it's tough to, as we say, challenge on a couple of fronts, but sometimes you feel like if they just let themselves off the leash a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I still remember the Chelsea-Barcelona whooping that happened just a couple of years ago, and I didn't see that coming. I mean, you don't go up against Barcelona expecting to win anything, and you know that they're the best team in the world, you know, one of the best teams. But I expected more from Chelsea in that day. But I guess that's the thing; they're missing these huge occasions. You know, they haven't been to a final in quite some time. That actually, perhaps the occasion got the better of them on that day as well. And I think we were all surprised to see Chelsea be beaten 4-0 by Barcelona. I know I was shocked that day, especially inside the first half. It was a bonkers result. I look at Arsenal and I see, you know, the experience in that squad, and then the youngsters coming through as well. And I don't know if that's the squad that can win the Champions League. You know, look at Emma Hayes' squad now. And I think we all know here, I follow Arsenal. I love Emma Hayes. I love Chelsea and what they do in women's football. But I want it so badly for Arsenal, you know, but I just look at the the momentum, the experience, how Chelsea are building and the players that they're recruiting. And I go, that's a Champions League winning squad. It could be their year.
It was funny watching Emma Hayes in the Champions League during the week. I don't think I've ever seen her that stressed on a touchline. And obviously they had a massive result against Lyon. It was good for them, especially when you look at like the history they've had in the Champions League. One final question to you about Chelsea before we let you go, Shebahn. Millie Bright, she was going for a scan yesterday. Has there been any update on that? Because that could be a massive injury for Chelsea for the run-in.
I know. I mean, it could be a case of tired legs at this moment in time. I've been texting around my people and nobody's responding to me this morning about Millie Bright. There's been nothing put up on social media, nothing up through Chelsea as yet. So I am a bit concerned about that. Millie Bright on her Insta story looks happy enough. It looks like she's with one of our young family members and she looks in good spirits at the moment. So fingers crossed it was just a knock and it was a case of tired legs. They're playing a lot of football just now. They've got Manchester City at the weekend. If Millie Bright has sustained an injury, that would be a big loss for Chelsea. But I think for now it looks okay. I don't want to jinx that, but it looks okay.
I needed to ask you about Saint West and whether he was going to be turning up for the North London Derby this weekend. But you know,
can I just say, in our house, right, in our group, I am the biggest Kim Kardashian fan. Think of me what you want, I don't care. I will go there for my escapism week out. Honestly, and when Katie sent me a message saying, Shebahn, you'll never believe who's at the Emirates tonight. And I went to sleep. I didn't reply. And then I woke up and I'd seen all the screenshots of Saint West wearing the McCabe top. And I literally nearly died. And Katie doesn't watch the Kardashians. I think she only hears about the Kardashians through having to listen to me talking about it. So nobody was more excited about that than I was. But I've DM'd Kim for a play date and see if she wants to meet up. Funnily enough, she's not got back to me.
Okay.
Thanks a million, Shebahn. Enjoy the football over the weekend.
Have a good one. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Shebahn Aherne on the line there, football writer. The North London Derby, it feels like, Kathleen, if we're having this conversation a couple of weeks ago, that it would have been money in the bank for Arsenal, but just with events off the pitch and a little bit more solidity about Spurs, is it slightly in question?
I think Arsenal should still wipe the floor with them, considering how Spurs are playing at the moment. They might get that, it's not even new manager bounce, but just that bounce after Rhian Skinner leaving and Vicky Jepson taking over. Vicky Jepson is a really, really good manager, former England assistant manager, has worked under some of the best managers in England at the moment. So she knows the squad really well because she's worked with them for a long time. Spurs are such an interesting case because they're actually so similar to the men's team in terms of how they play on the pitch. You expect so much more from them because they do have the talent there and they do spend the money. It's just they can't click in the same way. And with Arsenal, it's interesting. I mean, yes, there was the Mead injuries, which people have talked about so much, but also there's enough talent in that squad that they should be doing better in the league than they currently are. And I saw a few people suggesting this week that maybe they should just focus on the Champions League and not care about their league position at all, which I think for a team like Arsenal, it just seems weird to me that you wouldn't focus on the two and you wouldn't be able to handle the two, especially with teams like Chelsea there who, have a lot of competitions. They're still in the FA Cup, they have Champions League, and they also have the league. And tired legs, as Shebahn was saying there, possibly losing Millie Bright. There is an opportunity there to sneak up a little bit, so it'll be an interesting one. I love the grit that has come into the North London Derby in recent years, partly brought on by Katie McCabe, of course. She likes her battles with Ashley Neville and other players in the Spurs
referee
squad. Yeah.
We also pointed out the fact that last week on the show? Was it the day Stewie Byrne was in? Katie McCabe obviously came up because Katie McCabe was in this new colouring book of Stewie's. And I don't know why Kim Kardashian came up, but this is before Saint West was pictured at the Arsenal game with the McCabe jersey. And I said, who needs Kim Kardashian when you have Katie McCabe? Days later, I mean, she's
what
pictured.
You're saying is Kim Kardashian's OTB AM
fan of the show. I think that spurred her to go out and go,
yeah.
Okay, that guy's just...
That's possible.
I did say this to you because I was watching that game and it shot to the crowd and I was like, is that Kim Kardashian? And then a couple of hours later I saw the photograph of her son wearing the McCabe jersey and I was like, they must have been listening to Shane on the show.
What are the chances, man? What are the chances? The universe is funny sometimes. There you
go. United obviously off the top now and they're up against West Ham. It's at Old Trafford tomorrow. In the sense that they'd gotten so many plaudits over the previous months, they'd risen to the top, maybe slightly ahead of expectations. is it important that they sort of refocus on that, despite the Chelsea loss, that actually we need to hang on here for Champions League football, but we're still ahead of the curve, and that's kind of what's important?
I don't know. I think United fans are particularly disappointed with how they've fallen off. I mean, like, they used to get fairly well beaten by Chelsea, and the 1-0 result was probably only the fact that Chelsea had the class of a player like Sam Kerr. But there's so much riding on this season for United, in the sense that, Alessia Russo was already linked with, say, Arsenal during the January transfer window. Her contract is up this summer. There's a lot of interest in her from abroad. If they lose a player like her, and Ella Toone possibly might go as well at some stage, because those two link up so well, and I don't know who is out there for them to replace Alessia Russo with, especially if they don't make Champions League qualification. So there's been discontent in the United camp with Skinner and the way he's set out the team, and the fact that they aren't doing as well at the moment, and they're kind of trailing off, which is what they have done in previous seasons. And I think a lot of people thought that wasn't going to happen this season, especially, say, that 3-2 result they had against Arsenal. They showed the sort of fight that United haven't done in previous years. You would have expected Arsenal to finish them off at that stage. So I think for United, it's really important for them, if they don't finish top, that they finish second. And I think United fans will expect that from this team. They have 3 of the best players in England in Mary Earps, Ella Toone and Alessia Russo, who are all flying high after the Euros, and players like Untitled as well. There's so much talent in that United squad, and a lot of the players go under the radar. If you ever listen to Emma Byrne on Koi Gig, she is particularly fond of Untitled and talks about how good she is. So yeah, I think they need a big result for this season.
Yeah, and maybe Earps is part of the narrative this weekend that United don't concede many. They score loads, and West Ham are leaky, and so it's pre-decided that United are going to win, get back on track.
Emma Carroll has just reminded me here that in her team of the week, Bagier is in practically every week. I think for a lot, it's interesting this year, because it's probably the first time there's 4 teams properly battling it out. Of all the results at the weekend, I'm very interested to see how City-Chelsea goes, because City have kind of been not necessarily dark horses, but had a slow start to the season of just being quietly building away. And I mean, Khadijah Shaw, top scorer in the league, an absolutely incredible player. Chelsea have never had the best of luck in the Academy Stadium. The first time they won was November 2021, and that's the only time they've ever won there. So yeah, it's going to be a big battle for them, especially with it being in the middle of the Champions League, and whatever about the game in Lyon only being a 1-0 win. It was such an intense battle, and players like Erin Cuthbert, who hadn't played since the Conti Cup final, came on and put in an absolute shift. So City don't have those troubles. It's going to be an interesting one between the two.
Villa, obviously, one of those teams that are kind of pushing for the top as well. You mentioned before we came on air about the brilliant headlines around Daly and Daly.
Yeah.
But you've been very impressed by Rachel Daly this season.
Very impressed. I think she's been one of the signings of the season, and Carla Ward is doing an incredible job there and building a really, really interesting squad. But Rachel Daly has definitely been a brilliant addition. There was a lot of consternation last year during the Euros because Serena Wiegmann likes to play Daly in a defensive position, and she's not a defender like anyone who's watched her in the NWSL, where again she was scoring, she was a striker, she was incredible for Houston Dash. Kind of was watching the games, and I know when England have so many good defensive players already, there was a lot of talk about why Alex Greenwood didn't get more minutes. Instead, she seemed to prefer Rachel Daly. I don't know what it is, but she's come in this season, and I think she's reminded people in England that she is an incredible striker. I mean, she's up with Khadijah Shaw for player of the season in terms of goals, and that midfield has just been supplying her so well. And I love all the kind of Daly and dallying around headlines that have come out of it.
Yeah, it's been good, and it'll be a brilliant weekend, no doubt about that, and I'm sure we'll chat about it next week. Kathleen, thanks William for the minute. It's 8:28 and we've loads still to come. Alan Quinlan is going to be with us in a few minutes time to look ahead to the rugby this weekend, the start of the Women's Six Nations and the URC as well, and a little chat about the under-20s with Kevin Kilbane, chat we had with him yesterday, looking ahead particularly to the Ireland-France game on Monday night. We're going to have a Friday Firepit as well, that there seems to be a lot of love for us.
A lot of love.
People are here for it, Shane.
People are here for it, yeah. Especially weeks where there is also a crappy quiz, then the Firepit doesn't seem to get as much hit maybe in the comments. I mean, you got to.
People don't want one at the expense of the others.
That's the thing. Like, we haven't had around the world, in a few weeks, so we're going to bring that back. Hopefully at some stage soon. I'm just going to say it on air and have a production meeting with myself and bring it back. So some of these slots take a bit of time.
They do. No, some of them can be slow burners.
They can be slow burners. Yeah. Firepit. Pun there, unintended, I'm sure.
Unintended.
But, yeah.
A bit of chat about Harry Kane and the goal record last night, and the fact that he's got the record but no medals. All those goals and no trophy, says Schreider, and then somebody else follows up with he scored so many goals that mean nothing really. Has he ever scored a big goal that meant something? He's very unclutch. It's not an expression I've heard before. Maybe that's why 1-0 and doesn't play well in big games. Annoys people. We were chatting, the same commenter, we were chatting earlier on about the Johnny Sexton moment and the LeBron James moment and how sport should stop.
No, it shouldn't though.
John Terry, what?
It shouldn't. Sports shouldn't stop.
I thought you said something totally different there. John Terry coming off to a guard of honour in the 26th minute in his last game was very cringe.
That was the most pathetic sporting thing I've ever seen in my life. That was pathetic.
It's always going to be John Terry.
Even if he had number 72 on his back and they took him off the 72nd minute, I still think it was pathetic.
They would have done.
But the 26th minute is just a joke. Farcical. I feel sick now.
I feel sick for something that happened 10 years ago.
I know, but you reminded me of it.
It's exactly 8:30. You're watching OTB AM this morning. We're delighted to have you with us, and we hope you are very well wherever it is you're at on this Friday morning. We're here with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. During this break, you're going to hear Fiona Hayes. She was on the Six Nations show in the last 24 hours talking about her playing days, beating Wales ahead of Ireland's opener, of course, against them this weekend. The Six Nations shows with Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. Quinny, next.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Off the Ball.
I'm so intrigued by the relegation battle at the moment. 12th place Crystal Palace are 4 points ahead of 20th place. I want, Joe, a last day of the season. I know you're not as interested in things that aren't at top level, but tell me this wouldn't be amazing. Last day of the season, no team is relegated and 9 teams could go down.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
We must win against Wales is how you'd probably look at it.
Absolutely, this is huge. If they're targeting this place to get on that World 15s, which is you have to finish in the top 3, I think this is obviously the game that they're looking at. And I also think if I was coaching as well, obviously you don't look forward, you focus on the moment, but just to bring it up, I think if they could get that win in Wales, that France are there to be taken as well. They have lost a few key players, and if they can get confidence in this Wales game, they'll definitely be going forward very positive. But Wales, we know what they're like. They're the same old team the whole time. We know they're a big pack. We know that they get very, very physical around the breakdown. They like to, Grace will tell you, they like to stick their hand in and do a few things they shouldn't be doing, and that's what they bring. They love that area of the game, and they're always have been exceptional at set piece as well. They pride themselves on their scrum. So these props that aren't capped, these young guys definitely will be up for a big fight in that front row battle. But I think you've the likes of Jasmine Joyce. She's not around. She's playing the 7, so they've lost a couple of key players. I mean, their 6 last year, Alicia Butchers, was outstanding. She done her ACL, unfortunately, and she was out for the World Cup, and she won't be playing either. So they've lost a few key players in their pack, and we know this Ireland team can beat this Welsh team. So I think it will be how they travel, how they approach, how they start the game. If you give Wales a sniff at home and they get a couple of tries ahead, it'll be very hard to take it back. But if Ireland can hang on in there. I think we're fitter. I think we're faster. And as the game plays out, I mean, bringing on that bench, it's one of the most dynamic benches around the park, especially I've seen in an Irish team for a long time. So I'm excited. I think it's definitely a possible win game, but they have to go out with the mindset, a confident mindset. They all have games under their belt. There was times where I was talking about Irish teams and they haven't played enough 15s. Now they've all been playing rugby, so I'm really looking forward to it.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
It's gone 8:30. You're watching OTB AM. Around the World is very good, says Danny Mack on YouTube.
Yeah. My mum has a YouTube burner account, obviously.
Very early this morning. It's myself and Shane. Alan Quinlan has joined us in studio. Morning, Quinny.
Morning, lads. How are you?
We're great, and we've a bucket full of stuff to chat about. First of all, we might talk about the Women's Six Nations, obviously starting this weekend. I met your presenting colleague outside the Aviva on Saturday after the game, and she was obviously buzzing after having got the Grand Slam done. And I was watching her press conference, Niamh Briggs, during the week, obviously in the lead into this game, spoke really positively about the spirit, about the players, about where they're at, about vibing off the fact that they were in the same environment as the Grand Slam team, and some of the players quizzing Johnny Sexton about, you know, his technique and various bits and pieces. Like, I was really buying her positivity, I must say.
Yeah, I think she's very excited about it. I think working with players now who are not all of them are fully contracted, but they're in a professional setup now, if you like. It wasn't that long ago we were, you know, talking about the setup, the facilities, not the facilities, but just the whole environment and support networks. That was obviously pretty high profile. The training, the skills, matches we've seen the last couple of years, not qualifying for the World Cup, watching the ladies then play, and you know, a lot of talk about skills development and where they're at. Which is understandable, and I think that was something that kind of came out in a lot of those disappointments in the last couple of years. You know, upskilling the players, and they've now been put into an environment, albeit again you can still talk about it, and the level of the depth of those contracts and the amount of money that's been paid. But it's a very, very good starting point, and you have to give the IRFU credit for that. They took on board what was in the report, and they're starting to make changes around the women's game, which is very positive. There's still a long road. I think Greg McWilliams has openly spoken about, you know, I worked for the Women's Six Nations last year, and I remember preparing for the Welsh game, the first game in the RDS of the tournament, and it was all about patience and it'll take time. It's still the case. There's a lot of new players are starting tomorrow against Wales. There's only one of the backs, Nicole Cronin, who played in that game against Wales last year. So there's 6 new backs in there. Now 3 or 4 of them have made their debuts in Japan on the tour in the summer. And that was a really important tour for them as regards togetherness, getting a feel for what it's like to go on tour, the preparation, all that kind of stuff. Time for video analysis, you know, and really kind of building as a unit and feeling, you know, when you go away and jump on the plane, it's great. You're on I always love those summer tours. By the way, I hope they don't get rid of them. There's talks that there will be a global calendar in the men's game now, and that maybe we won't see those tours anymore. I love them as a player, and obviously working on them now. So for the girls to go away and kind of have that bond and enjoy each other's company and play those matches.
Tracks
it does. It makes them feel part of something that's moving in the right direction. I think that's my whole point here. So there's 8 changes in this team from last year. So half the team, it's new. There's a lot of young, exciting girls who are in the team. So Wales are a little bit more progressed because it's their second year with professionals,
and they have 15 players playing in the English Premier 15s.
Well, all 23 tomorrow.
Sorry, 23 in the
whole 23 are in
Wales.
The Premiership. You know, so that gives you an added advantage, and it's something that we've spoken about in the women's game about getting the level of the All Ireland League, getting more teams competitive. That is one of the challenges.
So by design, they're a little bit. They're obviously year 3 into their own professional thing, and so by design, that coupled with the Premier 15s, they're a little bit further down the track. But that's it's almost that race for third still, isn't it? Like we're still expecting France and England.
France and England are the two powerhouses here, and again, it's a tough start for Ireland being away. And going back to your original question with Niamh, she is very excited about it because, and I'm sure the other coaches are as well, being able to see the development and the skills, the skill set, the enthusiasm, the exuberance of some of these young players that are coming in, which is brilliant for them. So it's going to be difficult because you just, as you say, 23 for Wales are more advanced, and that is probably the hard part here. It's hard to kind of it's hard to kind of go and say, well, they should be beating Wales, they should be beating Scotland, they should be beating Italy, because you're not really sure where the other teams are at yet, and you'll get an obvious barometer tomorrow.
Yeah, well, there's a big unknown.
Wales were very big and physical last year, and that's one kind of area. Now, look, if you look at the Irish forwards, there's some brilliant players in there. Dorothy Wall is there, Maeve O'Leary, Brittany Hogan, Sam Monaghan, she was outstanding last year. Nicola Friday, the captain, Niamh Jones, the hooker. Sive McGrath is she's only 18, so she's young, and it's her first cap. Linda Daojang, she's a brilliant player, great ball carrier. So the pack looks, that it has something about it. They have a fair bit of experience. They're all playing at a high level. A little bit unknown in the backs, a little bit, but it should be exciting, and it'd be stating the obvious to say if they were to get a result tomorrow against Wales, how good that would be for confidence going forward. They've got France home next in Cork, which is, France and England are the ones to beat, obviously, and the others then. So I think it is a kind of a race to try and get into that position of beating Wales, beating Scotland. Both of those games are away. The Italian game is away, so
that's dodgy. Then the way
makes
the
it harder. Yeah, so
England and
you're probably
France
thinking
at home. Then
you're going to lose to England and France. With all due respect, probably, even though you have them at home, and then the three that you kind of want a little bit of edge that are fairly evenly matched most years, those three are away. So it makes it a little bit different. But look, no matter what happens here, I think we'll see a team that's very well prepared. That'll be exciting to watch, and that look, they're going to take a little bit of time, and I'm sure Greg and Niamh and Dennis Fogarty and the other coaches will say sometimes it's a bit unknown, because it is a step up this level. It's the same in the men's. When you go up to international level, it's a step up. So hopefully they start well and get a bit of confidence and build confidence tomorrow, and we wish them well.
Yeah, Cardiff Arms Park, 2:15 tomorrow. We'll be keeping an eye. The under-20s we wanted to chat a little bit about as well, because although it sort of wrapped up obviously last weekend, we haven't had a huge amount of time to pick through it. They really sort of, look, at the TV exposure obviously helps with this stuff, and the fact that they were winning helps with this stuff, but the fact that like a lot of the players look like they are absolutely ready to step onto the pitch for senior rugby, including Prendergast at half. A lot of them look like they could just step into URC team.
Yeah, and a few have maybe been added to Munster, Leinster squads for Europe, which shows the captain has been brilliant, Gus McCarthy as well. The skill set. Producing another hooker who can, like Dan Sheehan, who can run up and down the wing and offload. It's phenomenal. He was brilliant. Where are they all going to kind of stay? Because they've Kelleher and Sheehan. You think they're going to be around for a long time.
Same for some of the back rows, like the competitiveness there. That's the challenge now, isn't it, for a lot of these players that like.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that people were asking me. Joe was asking me in the Virgin Media last week. We didn't have a lot of time, Adrian, to go through it. I know Bernard Jacquin spoke about it this week, whether it was on the podcast or on Against the Head. Where do these guys go now? And last year's team, where like a lot of last year's under-20s Grand Slam winning team have gone into the provinces, and we haven't seen a huge amount of them, probably more in Leinster, but obviously there's a couple of Connacht guys in here that are incredibly exciting. Hugh Gavin and John Devine, the winger and the first centre as well. The two Munster lads again, Brian Gleeson, Rowan Quinn, they look like men, not boys, really, don't they?
It's funny that the lineup. I know they take on the senior team in Abbottstown very often in kind of behind closed doors games. Like, is that being exposed to elite performance at that age?
Well, when it's controlled, you know, it isn't like back in the day when I was with Shannon and we'd go up to Derryknockan in Young Munster's training ground, which was not in Greenfields. It was another mile or two out the road. The lighting wasn't great, and you're doing full-on scrums and mauls against Peter Claw, Ger Claw, Desi Claw, Ger Earls, Ray Ryan, all these fellas, and you're gone, Jesus Christ, if I fall on the ground here tonight, I'm gone. There's no linesmen, there's no sighting commission, so that's a bit different. That was free for all, and the more kind of rows and stuff, the better training went. Both for both sides, and that was when I was starting out in the IL. This is a little bit different, Shane. It's controlled, but it is. Your point is, you know, someone like Paddy McCarthy there, the tight head, has been outstanding as well. You know, the ball carrying. He's Joe McCarthy's brother. George Haddon, he got a try the other night against England. Even the props coming off the bench, George Morris and Fiachna Barrett. They've all added, you know, here, and they all look really, really strong and powerful. The biggest strength here, I think, or the biggest thing that's the most impressive for me is the physicality of the forwards. I saw them in round 1 over in Wales. Dave and I were over doing the commentary, and we were there very early. So when they arrived, they walked out onto the field. Obviously, it was very quiet. I was chatting to Richie Murphy and a few of the coaches and some of the players. I remember Evan O'Connell as a little small whippersnapper going around Paul's house when we were back in the day.
Not and small whippersnapper anymore.
Danny Sheehan as well, Frankie's nephew. He's Joey's son. So these guys, I just couldn't believe how big they were. How physical.
That's not the sort of thing that'll help them when they get to the senior ranks, because
they'll be all big.
Apart from anything else, the players that they're playing against now will
all be big. Yeah. But the skill set is really impressive. Hugh Cooney, who's the outside centre, and someone told me about him before. I think it was John O'Sullivan, writes for the Times, before the tournament. Just he watched a lot of these guys, and people know their names now. You know, people have watched him in the last number of weeks. He's a brilliant player, Hugh Cooney. There's lots of these guys who will go on and make it and be very, very good professionals and could play for Ireland. They have the real potential. Conor O'Tiernig, James McNabney, you can name them all.
On that playing for Ireland bit, are we likely to see, now there might be an absolutely sensationalist aspect to this, so feel free to remove the air from that if you need to. Are we likely to see more Ben Healy's, in the sense that, like, we're talking about obviously a very young profile of this Irish team that are there at the minute, very young profile around the provinces in a lot of the positions you're talking about. The opportunities might not be there for a lot of these players, and they may seek to Scotland to be an obvious one.
The starting team the other night is about 10 again from Leinster, so
I know Ben Healy is qualified for Scotland.
I know exactly what you mean. Could they go somewhere in residency and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, there's about 10 of these guys. The starting team last week were from Scotland. There's 2 or 3 from Connacht, 2 from Munster. I'm trying to look at the rest of the names here. 1 from Ulster in the starting team. Yeah, that's the way it was last week. So the vast majority of Leinster again, which is not a surprise. There's a couple of Connacht lads on the bench as well, from Sligo, Corinthians, Galwegians. So I have to mention them. I think the underage setup and systems in Connacht is really, really strong, and they've 4 or 5 guys here who are real good players who will make a big impact. You think those guys will kind of get into the Connacht group, I mean it respectfully, easier. The obvious one is the 10 or 12 or 15 Leinster fellas that are probably in this wider squad. Where do they go? Can Leo Cullen, can they go into the academy? Is there enough room for them? How many went in last year? So there's a certain number of them. It's just a numbers game. Where do they all go? And that's the point I was making. So then some of them will have to make decisions if they're really good. And I think like the hooker and captain, Gus McCarthy. So again, I don't want to speak for the guy, and he may fancy his chances of going into the setup, but with Sheehan and Kelleher,
young as well, like,
you're just kind of thinking, I want to play for Ireland. He wants to play for Ireland, Gus McCarthy. Does he need to go to another province? Does he need to go to the UK? France, whatever, and then he doesn't get selected for Ireland, or does he go to another
career
province?
Can just whittle away. We'll talk later on about Quinlan Kelleher in the football, and a career can just.
Well, there's a number of other players in Leinster who are good enough to play probably international rugby, and they're staying with Leinster. Two obvious ones are Max Deeg and Scott Penny. So, you know what I mean. It's down to the personal choices, because if you look at Max Deegan, got capped a number of years ago, and he was ahead of Doris, he was ahead of Jack Conan, and now, he's an incredible player for Leo Cullen to have. Don't get me wrong, he's a brilliant player and could. There is a risk moving elsewhere as well. That can happen.
They will also.
There's a lot of really good under-20s there, and it's very exciting. I think, and how they're managed now is really important, and what the decisions they make individually with their families, and there'll be agents sniffing around trying to sign some of them up as well.
There'll probably be they'll pay a lot of URC, of course, is the thing, which we'll mention before we wrap up. Leinster Stormers tonight, Connacht Edinburgh, Munster Glasgow and Ulster Bulls, all of those 3 games tomorrow. With Munster particularly, obviously people are looking ahead to the Heineken Champions Cup next weekend. They have the Sharks on Saturday. They got so close to a Heineken Cup semi-final last year. How important is it, Quinny, now that from
this
a
game is
point
bigger,
of view, that they close this out strong?
Glasgow is bigger than next week, to be honest, because they're not going to win the European Cup. Of course, they want to go to the Sharks in South Africa and give it a go. But the reward for if they were to beat the Sharks in South Africa is Toulouse away. So you're kind of thinking they won't think like that. Of course, you try and take it 1 week as they go. But tomorrow against Glasgow, for me, getting a minimum of 4 points would put them to 40. 4 or 5 points puts them to 51, 52 points. That's enough to secure them definitely a top 8, I think. Given the other chasing pack of the Bulls, the Sharks, Connacht, Benetton, Cardiff, I'd say to be in the top 8, because they have to go to South Africa for the 2. They play Stormers and Sharks, which is going to be incredibly difficult anyway. So if they take their eye off the ball tomorrow, it's a problem. And we saw from the last game they played in Cork, they won 49-42 against the Scarlets. The attack was brilliant, but the defence was poor. So they need to sort that out, because Glasgow will have their internationals back tomorrow. Not all of them, but they'll have some of them, and it'll be dangerous. But for Connacht, it's the interesting one for me, because Connacht are, since the last round, they're into 8 on 39 points. They play Edinburgh next at home tomorrow, then Cardiff at home, and then they're away to Glasgow. Win 2 of those, and I think they're in the top 7 maybe.
They probably have to be the first two realistically, don't they? The Edinburgh and Cardiff.
They have to beat Edinburgh and Cardiff, and then they're away to Glasgow in the last one. But they've given themselves a real shot in the arm here. You wouldn't have thought it kind of 2-3 months ago, of really getting something out of the season now by making the playoffs, number 1, and also being in Europe. The problem they are, if Connacht finished 8, they may not make Europe, because we've no Welsh team in that top 8, and there has to be from the 4 Shields.
So that would knock them out.
It'd knock number 8 out if there isn't. So at the moment, if you can imagine where they're sitting at the moment, if it was now and it was over, they're sitting at 8. Cardiff are in 10th. Cardiff would replace them and jump in to Europe. Connacht would still play in the playoffs. So hell of a lot to play. 3 rounds to go. Leinster obviously Stormers tonight. That should be a game, and then they're in South Africa. Ulster have 3 home games, so I think they're in a great position to have a home quarter, possibly catch the Stormers as well. They'll be hoping Leinster win tonight, and but they have 3 home games, so they have the easiest run in Ulster.
Rory Larmer was in contact on YouTube to say that he's loving your jacket.
Very good.
Nice jacket,
Yeah, thank you.
You bring up the fashion stakes in here, Connie.
Jesus,
It's very tasty, isn't it?
Putting the pressure on.
Although I wouldn't be going on Shane's judgment around the fashion side.
Adrian's jealous. Middle-aged fashion set.
Good man, thanks a million.
Thanks,
Enjoy the
lads.
games over the weekend. We'll catch up with you next week. A couple of highlights coming up on the OTB Podcast Network today. John Giles will be on the football show. That was from last night's chat with Nathan. The latest from Rugby Daily with Richie, and the full Six Nations show with Fiona Hayes and Grace Davitt as well. You can check all of that out. You can follow OTB across social, subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network. After this very short break, we're going to have the much acclaimed Friday Firepit, and during the break you can hear from Dan MacDonald chatting to Nathan about Ireland's defence is set ahead of Monday.
The talent of the squad defensively is the area you go, they've got a lot about them there, that they have Collins, Bamidele, Egan, O'Shea, Coleman, Doherty. A huge amount of quality that maybe is not fully replicated up the other end of the pitch. But Ireland looked decent in the final third. You're actually struggling defensively in games.
Well, I suppose just even to flesh out that discussion, right? If Ireland then did go to, that's a debate point, if Ireland did go to a back four, then you're talking about Kenny going back to what he knows or what he used to prefer. Like, he always did like playing with wingers, and it was generally like a 4-2-3-1 or 4-1-4-1 or whatever you want to call it, more so 4-2-3-1. So you can, I feel like we can slot the Irish defensive pieces into a hole comfortable enough, but then who's your two? Okay, Cullen, could you play Smallbone as a two there maybe, or Malumbi, but then left winger, right winger.
Mikey Johnson has emerged.
Well, Johnson's emerged, but I don't know, is he a 90-minute player? You've got McLean, you've got O'Dowda, I get it. Like on the right side, you play
Smallbone there.
Yeah, he could. Jason Knight a little bit narrow again, or Ogbene. But again, like, they're not all players who are playing those positions with their club. So like there's possibly a bit of work to do to find your best strategy within that. And clearly Kenny has reached the stage where he spent a lot of last year talking about how the plan was to build a settled squad for the Euros this year, a settled plan. He's very much of the view, now I've done that now, and he's probably going to live or die by that now.
What is it called? Friday Firepit? Firepit Fridays.
So we just put a bit more thought into dominating
miserable
comments box this morning. You gotta call it like it is.
It's Friday, like, come on.
The Friday Firepit.
7 minutes to 9, and I'm delighted to say Kathleen is back with us, and Cameron is here. Morning, folks.
Hello. I was joking because I'm filling in for the acclaimed Colin Buhig this morning producing, and I was
wow, Jesus, okay, big word for him.
I doubt he's listening, so he won't hear the compliment. But I was joking that I should have just sat here for the entire show, because I just keep bopping in and out and saying hello to you guys.
We're here for it. Yeah. It's the Firepit.
It is.
What's in the mixer?
Oh, well, I'm rather pissed off actually today.
Jesus.
So was watching England-Italy last night. Fairly okay game, but was really looking forward to the start, because I realised, oh my God, it's England and Italy. So we're going to have the Italian national anthem. This is going to be brilliant. I don't know if you saw it.
I didn't see the anthem actually, but I did hear.
It was horrendous. Absolutely. I don't know where this trend of having singers come on and do a kind of up to date, more adventurous style of the anthem is. Yeah.
Just don't change it,
Like there was like
It was in Naples the match, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very American thing, that, isn't it?
Incredibly American. We were just talking about this outside, and it really annoyed me, because that's a belter on its own.
Can I throw something out there? And by the way, not the first time Italy have made a balls of an anthem.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fair.
Now bear with me on this one, because I did think about it. It just was a thought that came into my head when I might have possibly even about the Aviva last week. So as you know, external factors may have been at play. But I just thought. So we go to the stadiums, right, and so the national anthems get played. They're very nationalistic. People get very patriotic about it. They're often quite militaristic.
Yes.
I think it's fair enough to say. It's about, either God will protect us or we'll kick the shit out of somebody, or if somebody comes and attacks us, we'll kick the shit out of them. That's roughly how those things work.
Yeah, or we don't like the English very much.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Less cursing, please, lads.
What you call it? So Ireland's call obviously has its detractors, but it's largely a fairly all arms around each other, and we get on with
nice.
We get on with things.
Yeah.
Could we inspire every nation to do what we're doing? Ditch the national anthem for sporting occasions and come up with an anthem that is specific to the sporting arena.
That's very. Can't you just be more like us, everybody else?
No, it's not. It's not that at all. It's not that at all. It's just an acknowledgement.
You've just thrown that out there, because that's such an intriguing.
I know, and I apologise for not thinking about this prior to coming on air to throw it out there. But it's not a could everybody do things like us so much as national anthems are.
Can you stop being patriotic? Just come out and say it.
Well, you get offended by the English.
Beating around the bush here.
I know. You know my views on that are well already.
There's nothing wrong with the national anthem at sports.
But you'll get very uptight about the English national anthem. Let's say
no.
There are people. Obviously, there are people around the world who get uptight about the French anthem or the Portuguese anthem or the German anthem or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas you could actually just remove all of that tension by tasking these nations to come up with something that's
let them sing God Save the King. I don't personally believe in God or the King, but that doesn't mean they can't sing it.
But you're also you're like you don't enjoy it.
No, they might end up with something like Ireland's Call, which is like very hard to get behind.
But don't let that be the benchmark.
Yeah, no, I know that's.
Do you know what I mean? Like the ethos of it is what I'm talking about.
I love Ireland and Ireland is brilliant.
You could do like a Eurovision style contest for every nation to work out what their song should be.
So when we played Qatar in that friendly, I was talking to my brother, we were about to watch it, and they were starting the anthems. And I said, I've never heard the Qatar anthem. And we made up lyrics. Like we said, the anthem was probably, we are Qatar, and that is who we are. And then just that for about 3 minutes.
That'd be a good one.
But that's the kind of thing that would happen if we tasked people to write their own sporting anthem. It's because it has to... Like, it'll be a camel designed by...
having a few beers in, watching Ireland Qatar and coming up with some bullshit is not like a bench... They're not reason to not do this.
A camel... You want Linda Martin singing it? Johnny Logan? Like, is this a Eurovision?
Why do we have to choose the crap route?
Because a camel is a horse designed by a committee. You would have to appeal to everybody.
Somebody could come up with something... You have to leave the possibility here. Somebody could come up with something good. Like, we can't just say this won't work because it's crap. You know, I have more... empathy for the sort of like it's our national anthem and now is a chance for us to like I hardly mentioned national anthem and you got the hand on your chest, Shane.
Yeah,
but
rightly so.
Frank says that I'm only saying that because I don't know the words to my own anthem. I mean I do, but also I'm not 5, so I'm not offended by that. It's if I didn't know them, I don't know them, and that will be it. As it happens, I do. And another one in here saying no music at stadiums, please. And Flying Hellfish, I am obliged to mention this, says congrats to Grammar beating Marist in the Senior Cup final on Wednesday. Sad face, oddly, it says after this. So.
Right.
But it was a convincing win for Sligo Grammar.
Grammar represent. Yeah, it was pretty great.
Congratulations. Well done. It was a great win.
Good luck to you. I wish you luck. But
I can't believe what you've just said, Adrian. Go on, sorry.
Well, there are people, David McLean here says, shocking idea. I'm open. I understand that.
Yeah,
I understand that.
like I find it interesting because, you bring up the point of national anthems, and I think I've said this before when we've talked about it. Like, I covered a lot of games in England and I never stood for their national anthem. And then as it went on, I never stood for anyone's national anthem because I was like, well, I can't really just like pick and choose one country because everyone kind of has their issues, especially in something like the Six Nations or, I don't know, the games I was covering. And would it be more comfortable of an experience to... Like, I totally agree with Shane. I love the national anthem. I enjoy going to Croke Park and belting out Aran Navi, and I'm very much the person that stands there and does that. But would it be a more comfortable experience if, say, you are going to games in England or you're going to games in the US and you don't have to stand for anthems or you don't have to sit there and listen to things that maybe bring up uncomfortable connotations to you?
Well, that's a really good point. I suppose we never really think about the effect it has on the players. Like, I've heard plenty of players like Rob Kearney and stuff saying it's the longest 12 minutes in the world waiting and doing the anthems. Like, imagine you're just ready to go out and play the game. You've got out of the dressing room, you're onto and then you have to stand there going, oh, by the way, if you weren't shitting yourself already, you also have the hopes of a nation. Just to let you know.
That's the pomp and ceremony, though. It's been part of the sporting process for a century.
Forget about the anthem aspect of it. We'll go out now and sing a song and then you can go and play the game.
Sure, songs are part of our culture.
And sorry, my last point on it as well is that, of course, we may end up having to, if discussions go the way people expect over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we may end up with a 32 county Ireland and the anthem is going to get stuck in the bin either way.
Well, I always think, like, in the end of...
maybe we sing something. Yeah, maybe we sing something else that's more all-encompassing. For sure.
I know it's different for us here, but say, like, in the US and the NWSL, they play the American national anthem before every game, and like the players who aren't from the US are also expected to stand there and sing the national anthem to the US, and like US. It kind of mixes. Some fans don't really care, and then other US fans get really annoyed if, say, like, Marsha doesn't sing the US national anthem, and you're kind of like, well, why do the players have to stand there and listen to another country's national anthem and be expected to sing it and participate in it, or like turn to the flag and put the hand on the chest and do the whole thing?
It's too much. Like, are you open to the national anthem changing?
No.
In the context of a 32 county Ireland.
Oh well, or you could have two songs and
No, that wouldn't work.
Why?
Well, because there will be issues with the wording of the current anthem.
And you're forcefully differentiated.
Well, put it this way. If having a United Ireland means coming to some sort of arrangement where we change the song, then I think a lot of people would.
That's what I'm asking. I'm asking you.
Yeah,
are you up for that?
I certainly would accept that.
I'd be up for one song. In fact, Tender Chicken 56 has said that we should just play Mr. Brightside and sing that.
Could we translate it to Ascoilgan?
No. Just leave it as it is, because it's the closing song to every nightclub I've ever been to. So it does have that place in the national conscience.
That used to do the songs every summer that went viral. Yeah, get them to do.
No offence, lads, but Kathleen, your view on this is who I'm most interested in. Are you open for ditching the anthem?
It's honestly very. I want a 32 county Ireland, and I am definitely open to changing things, but I also find it difficult saying that because all my family came from the north, came from a Republican background, very much would think that they lost a lot of their identity over the years that they spent during the Troubles, and it's something that we've talked about a lot in my house, and there's been a lot of back and forth, but I also have a lot of friends who are similar age to me, like mid-20s, who want to move on and want to have a different identity for everyone and a shared identity. So I'm definitely open to it as a conversation, but it's hard for me to say that, I think, which I think is fair enough as well.
It's not supposed to be easy. If we're to make accommodations for stuff that we haven't done up to this point, it's not supposed to be.
I think that's the thing. Like, it just always sticks in my head about my parents because I know how much they feel they lost, and they've always wanted to be recognised for their Irishness, and stuff like this means a lot more to them than it does to me. So I can flippantly say, yeah, it'd be hilarious if we had a different song and didn't play national anthems before games. But I know for them, it means something entirely different. And I know for other people, they might think the complete opposite way. So maybe that is as good a reason as any to change it up a little bit.
Because the reason we brought this up is we were going to talk about stadiums and the best stadiums in the world off the back of the T.G. Cahir documentary, the series that started last night, where Dara Kaneda visits different stadiums around the world, like the Azteca Stadium. I think he was at Anfield last night.
Gorch Orga, if you want to watch it.
Gorch Orga, exactly. And the best, like, what makes a great stadium, I guess, or a great venue?
I think you have to look at the video that's gone viral this morning of Argentina, their first game at home since the World Cup win, I think, and just like the sound that's coming off. Like, we can only see a Twitter video of it, but could you imagine actually being there? The noise, it actually looks like a cauldron, the way everyone is almost like half leaning forward in their seats, and all the players have like their kids out with them. They're in tears, the coaches are in tears. You wouldn't want to be facing into that as an opposition team at all.
I have two answers for this. The most beautiful stadium/venue I've ever been at was the Red Rocks Amphitheatre.
Yes.
Which is just outside Denver, Colorado. It's in Morrison, I think, Colorado. Have you been there?
No, I've never been there.
Oh my God! Like the Beatles, so many great artists have played there. There's even a little museum at the site as well. But it's Red Rocks, so you can imagine what it looks like. But it's just this tiered seating. I don't know exactly what the capacity is, but it's like natural sound just bouncing off the rocks, and it's just unbelievable. Not to mention you can see Denver in the distance, and beautiful American landscape. So that's the most beautiful. And then just obviously the Crucible Theatre. I mean, nice and compact. 900 people, I think. 900 to 1,000.
Drinking game. I think, take a shot.
906.
Shot number 2.
There you go. If you're playing Shane Bingo today, you're nearly there.
We've got them all in.
You only gave people 2 drinks.
You had a space interview earlier mentioned. So.
Space, yeah.
Astronauts,
space, snooker. Yeah, got it all in. But the Crucible for many reasons.
Is there, like, what's the feeling in a stadium that's that small, like 900 people? Is it an intense atmosphere? Because obviously it's quite quiet as well.
Yeah.
Unless there's a break in play.
Considering the sport, like, it's so intense. And anyone who moves, obviously, the players are straight away looking around, and you don't want to be that person whose phone goes off or who farts or who does something disrespectful.
Ronnie O'Sullivan giving you the stink eye.
You can imagine. So yeah, it's just, there's something about the atmosphere and the stars and the lights and the fact that it hasn't changed since the 80s. Like, it pretty much looks the same as it did when Taylor won that 85 Black Ball final. So a special place, the Crucible. I'm heading back next month. Can't wait.
Is it the stadium itself that's good, or is it the event that you see there when you're there?
Oh, it's a mix of both. Like, I would throw, as a very left field choice, National Basketball Arena out in Tala.
Wow.
I've been there and it's been absolutely brilliant on Cup final weekend. Really, really great atmosphere. Very animated crowd. Incredible noise that they can generate, because obviously it echoes as well. But it's brilliant. I definitely recommend going out if you get a chance to go to either a national game or one of the Cup final games. But yeah, it is the event as well, I suppose. But it's whatever that intangible thing called atmosphere is. If you can capture that within a stadium, because the Aviva for ages, everyone used to say, it just doesn't have an atmosphere. You can't generate that. And I think they've done a great job in terms of trying to correct that. But it is very, very hard to do that just like forcefully. It has to be natural, I think.
Freed from Desire.
Do you know what?
We should sing that.
When Freed from Desire came on, I thought, I turned to my pal and I was like, what's the story?
What was it like in the stadium?
But when the beat dropped, then I was like, this makes sense.
Yeah,
this is great.
On TV, I was quite
well, they played it twice. They not only played it once. They played it once, and then they went off for a while. They played some other stuff, and then they came back to it again. Right. But I think the crowd were vibing off the fact that the players seemed to love it.
Yeah, so Sexton was loving it.
Yeah, that's kind of what sort of kicked things. The atmosphere, actually, funny enough that you mentioned at the Viva on Saturday, was a bit weird. But I felt that it was more that felt to be like a boisterousness before the game started. Then it looked like the game was so flat. People got very nervous. And I think people sort of went into their shells a bit, because the swing low would break out, and then in one corner, and then people would either shout just loud noises just to make that go away, or start singing the fields. But it never really took on in a way that was. I just think people had been nervous about it, I think.
Yeah, I was at I used to steward at the Aviva, and I was at the 2018 All Blacks game.
All right,
and I remember that just because of the intensity and the focus that was so palpable in the stadium, and we were at the very far corner watching. That was absolutely incredible, because it was on a knife edge. I don't think atmosphere necessarily needs to mean noise and good humour and stuff. It can be just the intense focus that's going on. That can be an atmosphere in itself.
Did you ever get to chase a streaker while you were stewarding?
No, I didn't, sadly, no.
You're posing that as if that's a positive thing. Did you ever get to?
If you have stewarded at the Aviva on your CV, the first question you want to ask is, did you ever chase a streaker?
No, I was up in premium, unfortunately.
So you weren't even a steward stand to match positions?
No, I was looking at tickets and minding the toilet door. So all the glamorous jobs out there.
Like in case the door ran off or something?
Yeah. No, because there was you had to streamline it so people couldn't go through the exit door.
Okay.
Which they inevitably did, and then kind of half apologised when they did. Oh, I didn't realise.
Well, I'd say they weren't.
Apology accepted, Jesus.
I'm sure you weren't sticking too stringently to the rules, Cameron.
Yeah, a lot of wandering off.
Are we done?
I think so.
We still have Kilbane to come up, and also Hugo Keenan in a little bit.
I meant more the Firepit.
Smouldering away here,
I was just going to ask, is it out?
Smouldering.
Give us some love in the comments for the Firepit, please.
Absolutely.
Stop with the hate. We don't need the hate. Just even lie to us if you don't like it.
A lot of people asking about a woke national anthem, which of course, is not really what we're talking about here, but.
No,
it doesn't need to be all the negative stuff. We could come up with something good.
Freed from Desire is probably the best.
Danny Boy, somebody is saying here, which
I run a V, and I think is pretty good.
Yeah,
it's a good shout.
That's it for the Firepit this Friday.
What is it called? Firepit Fridays.
So we just put a bit more thought into dominating.
Miserable, I guess.
This morning. You gotta call it like it is.
It's Friday, come on.
The Friday Firepit.
Friday morning, delighted to have you with us, and thanks for all the comments over the course of the day. OTBAM with Gillette Labs, get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. On Monday show, we'll have Jean-Philippe Leclerc. We're going to have Anthony Moyles looking back at the weekend of Football League matches. Alan Quinlan, of course, in the rugby, and Shane's Gillette Labs performance rankings, and plenty more as well. Besides, right now, Kevin Kilbane, chatting to him yesterday about who he picked to play France on Monday, and plenty more. Enjoy the weekend.
You're listening
to OTB AM. The Football Pod.
Even if that's not the case, just the fact that they believe that he's the best coach 100%, is unbelievably powerful. Then if the fact that he is as well is the cherry on top. But once you get that buy-in, no matter what he says in training, we are doing that to the best of our ability, and whatever he says, we're taking it onto the field. That's the buy-in that sometimes coaches, if there's any bit of doubt, they don't get that.
Subscribe to the Football Pod wherever you get your podcasts.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
All right, welcome back to OTB AM. Delighted to say, live from Canada. He's just put on his Mayo top. You haven't seen the Mayo top for the last number of months because they've been in mourning, as they tend to be at this time of the year, but they're top of the world now. So the Mayo top is on, Kev.
Not at all. I've been out today, and I'm wearing the colours, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing more than that, to be honest with you. We're not on top of the world. Things are going okay. We won't get too excited. We won't get too carried away. You know that. So yeah, we'll see how it goes for the Roscommon game and beyond. You know.
I was going to ask you, when you're out and about where you are in your part of the world, do you get many people going, "Oh, you're a Mayo supporter"? Do you get many people going, "Oh, you're Kevin Kilbane"?
No, not at all. Really. Friday night or Friday when I was out for Paddy's Day last week, I went into a pub, and the guy who was singing, he's in a Dublin jersey as I walk in. So he honestly didn't recognise me at all. Didn't say anything to me, but he starts like grabbing the jersey and he's like going, yeah. And I said, yeah, go on, whatever, to him. And then half an hour later, he's obviously sat down and whatever, after he's finished his gig and finished the hour or so that he was on, he then comes over to me and starts to chat. Really sorry, didn't know who you were, and all this sort of thing. So no, I don't get recognised at all, hardly. No.
Going for a pint with you when you were over in this part of the world was horrific. Like, you'd never be able to have a conversation with you because legitimately you are both the country's nicest person and also one of the most recognisable sports people in the country. So, a lot of people want to get involved. You must enjoy the quasi anonymity almost, do you?
I don't think of it either way. Honestly, I don't think of it either. I lived in Dublin probably for 6 years, and I always reference the fact is I only moved to Dublin because of you, Adrian, as you well know. So, and I had too good of a time, I have to say that. So it's probably because I was too much of a face around town that people recognise me more than anything. That was the thing. I was out too much. Now I'm living a more secluded life, which I needed to. I needed to. Well,
you moved to Dublin because of me, which is a slight mischaracterization, but we'll allow it. And you moved to Canada for similarly good.
Because of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Equally, I had too much of you.
Now, if we had a production team around, they'd be telling me shut up and move on. So we'll do that. I wanted to ask you about. I'm obliged to ask you because I think the whole item was set up around asking you about France 2004. So I'll do that a little bit later. But the game first of all. So I want to get your impressions. Do you remember Sven's expression? First half good, second half not so good. Probably appropriate to last night.
I think that's probably fair. I watched the game yesterday. Obviously, it was the middle of the afternoon here. And then once everybody had gone to bed last night, I kind of stayed up and I watched it. We had live coverage actually here, live on DAZN, which it's very unusual. They get the qualifiers now, so it was nice. I didn't have to go looking for some dodgy stream, trying to get the game, which was quite nice just to actually watch it in the comfort of the house. But I watched the game. I actually only watched the first half back last night again. And there was so much to like, particularly as you say about the first half. I think first 20 minutes, something that I've been on with you guys over the last 2 or 3 years, and I've bemoaned the fact that we've started games so poorly. I felt we've started with no tempo. I think we've not necessarily been able to get going. There's been a lack of chances created during the first half of so many games. Whereas last night, the first 20 minutes, especially the first 20 minutes, it was actually great to watch. Really good front foot football. Without the ball, excellent. I really felt we were excellent without the ball. I really liked the back three, O'Shea, Collins, and Omobamidele, with the way they were stepping in. Particularly Collins early on. He stepped in early. He gave a loose pass after a couple of minutes, but I think it set the tone for us that they were going to step in. They were prepared to do that. Now, it'll be interesting to see if that can be replicated against France. I'm not so sure. There might be a little bit more caution, but it was good to see that. I think distribution from the back was excellent as well. When we had possession, build up from the back, the use of Malumbi into midfield, I thought was really, really good. And then getting Ferguson and Obafemi into the game as well. There was a lot to admire. There was a lot to like. And 40 minutes or whatever it was. They had the chance. I was disappointed. The only one I would say that they're really disappointed after, it was about 20 minute mark when they had a chance, should have scored, gilt-edge chance. I felt Omobamidele switched off. He's tried to play offside. He's tried to step up, a little slow to react, allowed the chance. But other than that, really, for 40 minutes, whatever it was, before the goal, it was really positive stuff, great stuff actually. Could have been 3 up, should have had a penalty, clear-cut penalty in my opinion, clear-cut penalty. But regardless of all that, there was a lot to admire. And then all of a sudden you're going in at half-time and it's 2-2 and you're thinking, Jesus, how the hell has this happened? But got the goal in the second half and it was comfortable. I thought they were very, very poor. I have to say that. I thought Latvia were really poor, actually. But they provided a couple of little moments within that game and got the 2 goals. And that's my only worry from it, really, I think, throughout that first half.
Well, that could be a big worry, of course, is the thing, given the quality of the opposition. And like you said, there was a couple of chances that they missed that were maybe even better chances than the goals they got that would cause you maybe a little bit of concern. The conversation obviously moved very quickly after the game last night to, right, what can we take from this in terms of selections ahead of Monday night? Like, you have Smallbone, you have the Coleman question, the goalkeeper question, you have, obviously, Ferguson's done pretty well. Benny has made a difference when he comes in. So where do you want to jump in on all of that?
Well, we'll start with the goalkeeper. We'll go back to front, will we? I've seen 1 or 2. You know, you're obviously putting a few tweets out around various things that's happened in the game. Certainly a lot of positives, I think, certainly with the new guys coming in or relative new guys. I'm still calling Ferguson, you know, it was his first start, so we have to put him in Smallbone and Mikey Johnson category. But if we go from Quinlan Kelleher, I know there's a lot of, I mean, the commentator here was really felt that Quinlan Kelleher should have saved both goals. I mean, I don't know what you're thinking yourself. I actually felt he wasn't to blame for either. If you look at the first goal, again, another strike from outside the distance, outside the box. We're getting beat by so many of these. It's crazy, really. An abnormal amount of goals from outside the box that we're conceding. Now, yes, you look at the goalkeeper. I suppose he's the one you do look at from that. Quinlan Kelleher, there was a suggestion that he didn't move his feet well enough. He couldn't get the necessary spring. He went with the wrong arm. All these sort of things. I just think he's not saving that. I generally don't think he's going to make the save from the strike. It was an excellent strike that went in.
Can we linger on that for a second?
Right,
just on him, and because I don't want to spend too much time, because I think Bazunu probably comes in and like ultimately, of course, I haven't a clue. Number one. But you know that I feel as
really,
if
goalkeepers get all personal about it when you start to mention.
Exactly, and
I wouldn't be one for I wouldn't be one, Adrian, as you know, for really getting behind goalkeepers and saying that they're great in all circumstances. But I just don't feel as though we could have done much more on either.
I'm not sure about that. But you feel so under qualified to make any comment about it that I'm not sure. It didn't look great to me at the time. Particularly when that sort of bobbled up in front of him and he failed to get away. But I also sort of take the context of he's not playing football at all. And we were chatting earlier on over and back in voice notes, and you were making the point that obviously Bazunu has a couple of years of football under his belt and Kelleher has SFA under his belt. And at some point or another, as far as I'm concerned, that's a monster issue for him. Forget about the Ireland stuff. Like for a career, he's going to need to start playing football soon.
Yeah, of course, he has to. He has to. At what stage are you going to get in your career, or are you going to get to in your career before you make that decision? I have to start playing football. For me personally, I was like 18. I wanted to play football. You know, various options I could have had when I was 20, 21, when I was leaving West Brom. And there wasn't necessarily with a guarantee of playing first team football. I wanted to play football. And I know we've changed a lot since then. So I think I have to legislate a little bit for that there's a mindset different, particularly for goalkeepers. But Bazunu's played 2 seasons now, 2 full seasons. I'd say he's, in my eyes, he's number one. Aside of the goals, that people can have their own opinion on it for whatever. I don't think he could have done much more, and that's my own personal opinion on it. I don't think he looked great, Kelleher. I don't think with his feet. I think he looked a little bit shaky, in my opinion. Not that shaky is maybe the wrong term. I just don't think he looked. He just didn't look right, and and it's not a great evaluation when you're saying that, but. I think there was one time he took the first touch, went behind him, almost like give a corner away, and then he's swinging his left leg at it to clear it. He just didn't look. He didn't look game ready. Yeah. Sharp. Now, whether or not that's, he might tell you and say, look, I'm training every day at a certain level. But in my feeling of it is, you always get better the more games you play, the more confident in your surroundings. And I don't think he looked entirely comfortable. In my opinion, I think Gavin Bazunu is the number one right now for a reason, because he's played a couple of years and I think he's ahead of him. I think that's the way that it is now. We might not have thought that 2 years ago. We might have thought that they're neck and neck and they're at a certain level or a similar level. But Bazunu's played a lot more games now, and I think he deserves to be number one. And I think he should start against France.
I know you have concerns about Bamidele, and that included, but like Coleman coming in from Monday night seems like, to be honest, to me, seems almost like a little bit of a no-brainer in terms of his experience, the leadership that he brings. He's been playing okay for Everton. Like, he's a real steady pair of hands there.
Personally, I'd play Seamus Coleman, definitely. No, it wasn't so much I wasn't convinced of Bamidele. I think he's very good on the ball. I think his quality is good, although in the first half, again, he was a little slack with a couple of passes. And again, we're being overly critical. It was more the chances that was given up. The chance right at the start, I think it was the 46th minute, just at the start of the second half as well. He misjudged the flight of the ball. He actually reacted well to force the Latvian player to take the strike early. He couldn't necessarily wait for it, so then he put it over the top of the bar. And then, as I said earlier on, the one around 20 minutes where he gave up the chance trying to play offside. I don't think as convincing as when I've seen him. I really liked him when he first played for Ireland. I thought, wow, this guy's going to go on and be exceptional. Now all of a sudden, Dara O'Shea, Nathan Collins have really started to develop now. Personally, I'd play Seamus Coleman alongside those two. I think O'Shea was very good last night. Apart from maybe the second goal where he got himself in a bit of or he got tangled up with O'Dowda going for the same ball where that should never have happened. Don't get me wrong. I thought O'Shea was very good. I thought he looked accomplished on the ball, very good defensively as well. So I'd go with Collins, O'Shea, and Coleman. I think that's the best trio. I think they're in the best form right now. I think Seamus has been playing very well for Everton, and I think it suits him playing in a back three like that. So I'd go with Coleman. Yeah.
What's your midfield?
I think Will Smallbone last night with how he played, he's definitely put me into contention. I think Cullen absolutely starts. I think he has to start. Malumbi did well last night. He's never really found a real consistency for every game he's played for Ireland, Jason Malumbi, but it looks as though he could be. Well, Cullen will definitely start. I think that's the way it's going to be. I mean, Alan Brown, who I really like Alan Brown, but I think that Malumbi's been playing well, I think, at West Brom. Him and Smallbone look very good together, but it's probably going to be Malumbi and Jason Knight who's probably going to start. So Smallbone might miss out, but I think Smallbone certainly, with how he played, delivery for the first goal, exactly what he played, man of the match performance from him. I thought he played really well, and he's certainly a great option for us. I think sometimes you've got to go with what's been around the camp in the past. Sometimes that's not always the case, but I'd probably just go with Malumbi and Jason Knight. Just go with that three, but very, very close on Smallbone.
Yeah, and that may be exactly the way he goes. Like, I mean, I think we can all, and Mikey Johnson probably fits into this category. So, to be fair, Smallbone's like player of the match and has bossed the game. So it's a different level, but there can be a bit of momentum can get behind a player like that.
Yeah,
whereas
I'd understand if Stephen Kenny started him. That's where that I would look at it. I'd understand because of how well he did play. I even look back to my first introduction into the squad or first appearance. I wasn't expecting to start my first game, and we played in Owen Hand's testimonial against the League of Ireland select, and I played quite well in the game. And all of a sudden, Mick goes, right, we'll throw you in. So there's a little bit of that you're playing well, and I had a nightmare in the Iceland game. I think that's probably common knowledge at this stage, but it doesn't necessarily always work out that because he's played well in that game that he's going to do well against France. It'll be a different game, and personally, I think Malumbi, with the physical nature that he's going to bring to our midfield, I'd probably go with Malumbi just for how he's going to get around the pitch and maybe close down. It won't necessarily always be about being in possession of the ball in that France game.
You prefer the Ogbene-Ferguson connection there. Obafemi, to be fair to him, obviously, number one, has propensity for a world-class goal. That's absolutely in his locker. And look, I'm not sure about his all-round game, but certainly there are times in the game where he has a little bit of X-factor that we don't have a huge amount of.
I'd agree with that. I would. I just don't always know what I'm going to get from him. That's the way that I would look at Obafemi. I think at times too many balls bounce back off him. His hold-up play sometimes, in my opinion, isn't for what I would expect from an international centre forward. But he does give you that little bit of X factor at times. Last night, I thought his work rate was good. I thought his movement in behind on a couple of occasions, particularly through that first half, was very, very good. And as you say, he gives us that unpredictability. I think he does give us that up front. I prefer Ogbene. I like Ogbene. I really think that he brings. I think his movement's better personally. I think his hold up play at times, even last night coming in, a couple of things bounced off him. But his introduction and wanting to make an impression last night was very, very good. So I understand the link up, or I understand the combination of Ferguson starts, Adrian. No doubt in my mind, Evan Ferguson has to start. There's no other question for everything that he brought last night. As I said, I watched that first half back last night, and I actually was watching it going, yeah, wow, very, very good. You know, as we talk about, I've spoken recently about what the things that he can do coming off to play as a 10, playing right up front as a 9, his hold-up play. He's playing on the half turn, taking the ball on the back foot with the ability to take the ball towards opposition defences that immediately puts them on the back foot, looking for movement off. Everything to his game. There's no doubt. I think it'll be a huge mistake if Stephen Kenny doesn't start him. Absolutely huge mistake for the form that he's in. Obviously, the goal. We're going to talk about the goal. He has to, Adrian. Right. He has to.
Is it a slightly different role, Kev, when you're up against that quality? The quality of that France defence obviously would be a million miles. Is he a little bit deeper in that position, or how do you see that working out for him?
Well, I think he can play different ways, as I was saying there. I think he can play deep. He can come deep and become involved in link-up play. I think he can play high through the middle and stretch opposition defences. I think he's got a lot of quality to his game. That's what I was saying there. I mean, if it's Obafemi, if I'm Michael Obafemi and I'm going to play alongside him, what I would be concentrating and what I would do in this next few days, I would watch what Evan Ferguson did in that first half and think, right, how am I going to be able to stretch opposition? Now, if Ferguson's dropping deep, I'm going to go every time for a little set back pass. I might be the one that's going in behind for a first time ball played in behind France. There's certain ways that he can really capitalise. If it's Obafemi or whether it's Ogbene, whoever it's going to be, probably you would have to say Obafemi's the man who's scored goals in the past. I know Ogbene last night did the business, but it might be that he's going to use Ogbene off the bench, and Obafemi can find ways to really hurt France off the back of what Evan Ferguson does because he's such a clever player.
Well, even that little assist last night, like the intelligence to get to the end line, understand the flight of the ball. If it was to get past the keeper, it was coming his direction and get the little flick back in.
And that's instinctive, isn't it? That as well, just find himself in a position. It looked on first glance it was out, but I don't actually think it was. And Ferguson finished. It was great. It was a fitting story for Ferguson to score on his first start, wasn't it? It was great for him. And we've all got a lot of expectancy around him, and that's the difficulty without putting too much pressure. And I think everyone will tell you that's been in the game. The game can come back to bite you in the ass very, very quickly. But he's in form. He's playing well. Everything to his game. You can't help but love watching him play in every aspect of his game. I think physically he can handle it. He's got a little bit of pace. He's not unbelievably quick, but he's got a little bit of pace. He can get away from defenders, but he's also got such class on the ball. And as I said, it's a no-brainer to start him. He simply has to start in the game.
Yeah, even his attitude. Stephen Doyle did an interview with him afterwards, and he was just giving him nothing. There was like there's a real sort of mature head or whatever. Like he was very He's got a great grounding, obviously, in his dad. I'm sure he's given him plenty of advice and all that. So, and then Doherty and O'Dowda, are they just any changes there?
Yeah, I think that I can't see it. I think O'Dowda scoring. I like some of the things that Callum O'Dowda does in that position. I like that he's. I think he's engaging further up the pitch. I think he's got more of an understanding of the position as he's gradually played there a little bit more. Half a yard on his to shift the ball, gets his crosses in. Put a couple of actually decent balls in that we didn't necessarily get on the end of last night. I like the fact of both widemen, and again, it was something that stand out. Ferguson's knowledge at such a young age as well. Matt Doherty coming inside, or Matt Doherty, as I was hearing quite regularly last night. Coming inside, Ferguson immediately faces up for the little bounce pass inside, little give and go inside. He did it a couple of times with O'Dowda. the way I would look, it was something that I would always try to learn as a kid. When you're playing in wide areas, you're checking back onto your right hand side. So it's either a little inside of the right foot pass or an outside of the left foot pass. A little give and go. Try to run off the back of that pass. You can either go across him, you can either go back on the outside, and Ferguson is immediately in the position to do it. Honestly, I bet he's a joy for Doherty and O'Dowda to play with, because he's going to make you look better with the things that you do with his movement inside. So, or with their movement inside, should I say? So yeah, I'd be quite content with Callum O'Dowda. James McLean, obviously, he's a great option to bring on if something needs to happen in the game.
Mikey, are you getting Mikey in there too early?
I wouldn't start him. I just think it's how you're going to get him into the side. It might be a change of system, a 3-4-3 with how it might have to be. Whether it be Ogbene off the right, or it wouldn't necessarily suit Obafemi playing off the right-hand side. But a 3-4-3 system would be the ideal system, but it might be a little bit too adventurous. It might be a little bit too, I don't know. I'm looking. What I'm saying is, I'm
too positive.
Still, yeah, too positive. I'd look for a little bit more caution. I would with the game, because they're going to have more of the ball. Necessarily more of the ball than us, but they're going to have more of the ball than Latvia had. I think we had like 82% possession after 20 minutes last night. That's not going to happen against France. So I think I would want a little bit more midfield solidity, and Ferguson Ogbene, Obafemi. Ogbene might be a better option, because I think he's more of a player that can drop back and make an overload in midfield, and it might be Ferguson as a lone striker at times, how that is going to go. But there is Stephen Kenny. The one thing we've not said over the last couple of years is Stephen Kenny's got options, and he's got very good options off the bench, and we've got options to change the system within that. So I'd be positive, way more positive going into this game. And I know that Latvia were dreadful. I have to say that Latvia were really poor, I thought. And we allowed them to play at times through the game last night, and gifted them a couple of chances, too many chances, in my opinion, for the quality that we've got. France, we know, is going to be different. But I think with a little bit more midfield solidity, with the various options that Stephen Kenny has got, I think we can put it up to them. And I'm quite confident. I'm quite confident that we can actually get something from the game.
All right, well, that's a good note to leave that particular conversation on. I am obliged to ask you, because you tweeted about this during the week, and our erstwhile producer Colm sent it on by way of setting up this entire piece, which was great. So, 10th of October 2004, France, World Cup qualifier, World Cup 2006 qualifier, 0-0 in Paris. And I quote you here, Kev, from The Guardian, and you can take it up from here. With the midfield battleground obviously up for grabs, Brian Kerr plumped for Kevin Kilbane's energy to dovetail with the old warrior Roy Keane. I think you were up against Mavuba and Decor, if I'm right, from looking at the team sheets from that night. Kilbane's energy wasn't, I have to say, not the greatest compliment that whoever that was could have paid you. But
Kilbane's lack of quality but energy. He gives it his all, doesn't he? You know, that's the way it is, isn't it?
That's mischaracterization of history. Go on.
I had certain qualities. That's the thing. No, do you know what? There's not too, honestly, my overriding memory, genuinely, and again, sounds a bit corny, my overriding memory from that game was 30,000 Irish supporters at the game. It was unbelievable. Away from home, to have an atmosphere like that was the best atmosphere for an away performance. And I think that's what gave us the momentum in that game to play the way we did. We probably should have won the game. Everyone always talks about John O'Shea's miss from the game. Everyone always says that he should have scored, and maybe he should have done. Maybe he should have hit the target.
Roy had a chance,
but yeah, I know. But I think it was a hard chance for John. It came at him really quickly, and he had to react. And he just tried to guide the ball on target, and it just went wide. So I can't remember Roy's chance in the game. I don't remember
header. I think
was it. We did okay. We didn't win the game, did we? So ultimately, we came away from that game, and then they came to Dublin later on in that campaign, and Thierry Henry stuck one in the top corner when Richard Dunn marked him out of the game. Honestly, Dunny had him in his pocket, absolutely in his pocket, and then he scored, and there was nothing in that game. It was such a class game. Goal. Yeah, it was a great goal. Great goal.
Nice.
Brilliant
As much
goal
as it pains us all to say that, it was an absolute class goal.
It was. And again, Henry did nothing in the game. Honestly, Dunny had him in his pocket. Dunny was outstanding on that night. And it, ultimately, by not getting that result or the win in Paris, cost us down the line. And there was ultimately different factors within that qualification campaign that cost us. And I think we maybe became a little bit complacent after qualifying for the World Cup, that group of players should have qualified for the next 2 or 3 tournaments. We had a really good team, Adrian. Honestly, good 18 players, I would say. Anyone that came into... Look, I was in that midfield that night. Playing central midfield wasn't probably my best position, but I felt as though I should have been in the starting 11. However we were going to play or whatever system we were going to use, I felt as though I was good enough to play.
Were you chatting to Brian about that in advance? Was there a conversation about it, or how did it come about?
No, I think Brian had seen me play at Everton. We were probably using a 4-5-1 system at Everton, and at times I'd played inside. I played in a 3-man midfield, left of a 3. So I could do that job playing in there. And I think Brian saw me as a way Damien had to play. So whether it was going to be Damien up front with Robbie or whether we were going to use other options. We also had Andy Reid. We had to get Andy Reid to an extent into the side as well. You know,
did he come off the bench?
Did he? I don't know. I can't remember.
I think he came in for Duff.
Yeah, Duffer got injured, I think, in that game. I think Duffer got a bit of a knock, but Damien had to play, and then Andy Reid. If Andy Reid's fit, Andy Reid has to play for us. So usually what would have happened, we would have had Robbie up front, and it probably would have been Clinton getting left out with Andy Reid playing as a 10, or even Damien playing as a 10 with Andy Reid on the left-hand side. And I played inside then to get me into the team, I think, because I think Brian wanted his best 11 on the pitch. And, we're not being too big-headed or anything, but I felt as though I was certainly in the starting 11. However, I was going to get into that team. So it was just about fitting personnel into certain positions and getting the best 11 onto the pitch. And that squad that we had, I felt we underachieved badly. Stephen Carr, Stephen Finnan. It was a case of getting those two into the team as well. We had 2 brilliant fullbacks in Carr and Finnan, and I think Stevie played a lot of his games at right midfield, so he could get Carr and Finnan into the side. We also had, Harty at left back. I could have played left back as well. Kenny, obviously, at centre half, who was excellent, brilliant goalkeeper. We had a good side. We had a really good, obviously Roy as well. I'm forgetting Roy, but we had a good squad, and we underachieved badly underachieved. Honestly,
the group ended up really tight. There was 1 point between the second, third, and fourth, where Ireland were fourth, and Israel, and then the Swiss, who went into the playoff and made a balls of it. Was that the game in Tel Aviv where your man scored from 30 yards out near the last kick of the game? Was that campaign?
Another 30-yard effort. We're falling into that category at the moment where I read this morning. I think we've conceded since 2021 more goals from outside the box than any other nation in world football, which is crazy, really. I don't know why this is happening, whatever that's happening, but that's what happened then in that Israel game. A long strike. We're not blaming Shea, are we? We're blaming Shea for that? I don't know. No,
it was crazy.
Crazy. I was
at that game.
Tel Aviv, were you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I was at that game. Yeah, I was working at it, and I remember I mistimed. Went out for a few pints afterwards. Very enjoyable evening, and I mistimed the departure of the bus the next morning, and arrived back at the hotel as all the journalists were getting on the bus, and I was like, I thought I had an hour to spare, and I was, needless to say, I was tired and emotional, Kev. And
you pulled the Kilbane.
It was a long journey home. Just one last one on that, right before we wrap. So playing centre mid with Roy, not a position that we're used to against, the best player we've ever had in that position, one of the best players in the world ever in that position. Is there a chat beforehand? Is there a chat during the game? Are you communicating? Or is it just a case of everybody shut up and go out and play your game and get on with it, and he'll bark at you if you're doing something wrong? How did all that work?
I love playing alongside him. I did. I've always said, I think when Roy was in the side, whether I was playing the left midfield or wherever I was playing in the side, Roy brought the best out of our team, and I felt I was probably better when Roy was in our side. Certainly we were as a team. I think that's understandable. I think everybody recognises that. The only thing Roy used to say to me when I played in midfield with him, which shows how far the game has moved and how much it has changed, Roy always used to say to me, don't cross. Never cross in midfield. Hold your position. Whereas now we'll look for rotation in midfield. You know, if we're playing with the three, we look for the guys for a bit of rotation to get guys on the ball. Whereas Roy it would have had to have happened at some stage if you're getting over to make a challenge, if you're out of possession. Roy, the only thing, honestly, nothing more as simple as that, as simple as it sounds. The game is simple to an extent. Don't cross over. You stay on the left, I'll stay on the right. Don't cross over at any stage. And that was the only instruction he gave me, which, again, the way that the game's played now, that sounds fairly old school, doesn't it?
Was there chat during the game or no?
Not really. No, Roy was quiet. I think it was, honestly, in the dressing room, he was quiet. Roy
like an encouraging word or like anything like that, or no?
No, a little bit of that. Pretty much like us all. I think at that stage, I was getting a bit more experience in the squad as well. I would have been, you know, considered one of the older lads myself. At that stage, I probably would have been 26, 27 maybe. So I'm getting to the stage where I'm trying to pass on a bit of my experience to the younger players anyway. Roy just used to have a cup of tea and a Jaffa cake, or a cup of tea and a biscuit. That's all he used to have before a game. He'd always have a cup of tea. Again, even that, it's, you know, nutritionists would tell you that's wrong. Everything about it's wrong, but Roy would always have a biscuit. I think it was a Jaffa cake. It was definitely the digestion or something like that. Jaffa cake and a cup of tea. That's all Roy used to have. And he'd sit there quietly in his own thoughts. Not really, as I said, not screaming, not shouting, not giving too much away. I'm sure most people would tell you that. I'm sure he was the same at Man United. Very quiet, led by example. When something needed to be said, he would say it, but no, not too over the top at all.
What's good for the spirit is not always good for the body, Kev. Is the lesson there about the tea and the Jaffa cakes?
I still like a good cup of tea anyway. But anyway,
I'm with you. Good enough to leave it on. Come here, listen. Enjoy the
Lions or Barry man.
Oh, you need to ask.
Yeah, well, I know you're a good Leinster man yourself, so you're a Lions man and all that.
No, anyway. I'm Barry's all day long.
Really?
You can't have a surname like mine, Kev, and not drink Barry's tea, you know?
I know that. But yeah, everyone Dublin, they're all Lions man, aren't they? So there you go.
Good man, enjoy the match.
A good South Sider like yourself.
Yeah, enjoy the match on Monday. Good man, thanks a million.
Take it easy, thank you.
All right, I am delighted to be joined by a man who has just won the Triple Crown, the Six Nations, the Grand Slam, and is nominated for Player of the Tournament. Surely going to win that as well. Hugo Keenan, I would ask you how you are, but I suspect life is pretty good right now.
Hey Nathan, thanks for having me on. All well on my part. It's been a good couple of days and a great weekend, so I can't really complain.
No truth in the rumour that you had to be dragged out by the year out of Keogh's and South Anne Street in Dublin to do these interviews?
No, definitely not. The party's over, unfortunately. We're back into Leinster today, re-introing for a big few weeks. So it was short-lived, but very enjoyable.
I said Keogh's because I saw on their Instagram last night they were putting up pictures of James Ryan and Jack Conan and a few of the other lads were still partying. So were they back in Leinster as well today?
That was, everyone was back. That was probably from a few nights ago.
Okay.
Monday night, so day 3, I think.
Right.
So,
did you leave it at day 3?
We did. We were called back into action today. So I think 3 days is enough. We had to get our bodies and minds right yesterday and come in today relatively fresh and prep the lads for the big game against the Stormers on Friday.
I assume it was a very light session.
Yeah. Well, I'm not back yet. On my return to play after a bit of a head knock there. So, lads still had a decent session out there. It was a good standard too. Good 15 on 15 teams going up against each other. So I think it was a brilliant way to prep for the weekend for those lads playing against what's going to be and sounds like it's going to be a very strong Stormers side.
So the last a lot of people would have seen of you was been taken off at half-time and failing the HIA, then not being able to come back on. Were you able to take a full part in all the celebrations, post-game, Saturday night, all of that?
Yeah, I suppose you just had to be a bit sensible with the head knock. But no, definitely able to enjoy the moment. I was still on the pitch at the end. I was mad keen to get back out there for the second half, but unfortunately that wasn't to be, but delighted the lads did the job anyway. I was a bit nervous on the sideline. Geez, it's not a good place to be. I'm not sort of used to it, and I don't want to get used to it, because I think you're more nervous watching when you can't control anything. But no, it was those, I suppose, last few minutes when it was sort of in our control and job done were very enjoyable. And then getting the family on the pitch and seeing them after and getting them to lift the trophy and whatnot was really special. And then we were into the RDS for a few formalities and whatnot. So yeah, very enjoyable evening.
It's the whatnots I want to know about. It's such a special occasion to win a Grand Slam in Dublin for the first time. Like, it's one of those things that you probably can't appreciate 4 or 5 days on fully, but in 50 years, you'll still be able to look back at that photograph of you and the family and the trophy, and you'll know what it meant at the time. The stuff that is fresh in your mind over the last 4 or 5 days, as much as you're free to tell us about the celebrations, what are the things that stand out? What are the special moments that stand out? Maybe messages you've got or people you met along the way?
Yeah, it was definitely just that moment in the Viva, doing the sort of lap of honour with the trophy, and I think that was the special part. Whole, like, the 52,000 people sticking around, bit of Free From Desire being played around the stadium, knowing that all your family friends are there watching on. I was lucky enough. My dad did a good job getting a few tickets and gave a few to friends and family, myself as well. So I had unbelievable support in there, and to have them on the pitch after is a bit of a dream. And I suppose lucky enough just to do it in the Viva and to get that chance. And I think that was a huge motivation for us throughout the campaign, and certainly that last week leading up into sort of that final as we were viewing it.
Freed From Desire, are you a fan? There's been a lot of debate since. Is this the appropriate song to be celebrating in Dublin after a Grand Slam?
It's a bit of crack, isn't it?
It works, doesn't it?
I think the crowd got behind it. I don't think we were controlling the music. We were just going along with it. So it's just for a bit of fun, and it's good way to get a bit of a buzz going, and everybody likes it, I think.
It's good for Johnny Sexton and Peter O'Mahony and the older lads, something of their vintage that they know and that they can get involved with.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the old school music myself now, so I wasn't complaining too much.
The Freddie Stewart incident, then, our first time talking to you since, it's obviously been overturned, the red card since then. The disciplinary committee said that the tackle, they decided the tackle was an act of foul play, but they felt there was sufficient mitigating circumstances to view it as a yellow card offence only. What are your views on what happened, whether it should have been a red card, your memories of the actual incident?
Yeah, I suppose it's probably not down to me to judge whether it's a red or if there's to be a ban or whatnot. But I felt for him. Certainly, he was very apologetic after. It was an unlucky incident, wasn't it? It was just one of those events. I felt for him as a fullback. It's a tough sort of position to be in. So I was chatting to him after, and he was very nice about it, and he apologised. And I think it was a complete accident. So not surprised it was overruled. Yeah,
it is a difficult one, because the more you watch it back, I think the more people were almost undecided, and we had a lot of people very strong on one side that it was certainly a red card, and certainly all the emphasis is on Stewart to slow his run down, so that if there is a stumble or if there is a knock on, he can react quickly enough. You're playing on the pitch, how quickly would you expect a player to be able to react to the little knock on and you maybe changing position at the last moment?
I don't know. I'm nearly probably the worst person to be asking. All my eyes were on was the ball and focusing on that, and I didn't exactly get to watch it back or anything. So
one of those that probably 5 years ago we're saying is it just a rugby incident, but there's such a rightful awareness of head injuries and protecting the prone player. When you talk about a fullback, you have sympathy. Does an incident like that actually make you think about the way that you have to defend at times? Because even an accidental, and I don't think anyone felt that there was any real intention on it, you have to prepare yourself at all times, that even if it means slowing down a millisecond to give yourself the time to change your body shape, the onus is now on you.
Definitely, but that's the responsibility in rugby. But I suppose it's more for the high tackles and whatnot, while this one was probably more of a rugby incident as well. So it's hard to judge. I know we were talking about it a lot in Irish camp, just getting our tackle height down and whatnot, because we've sort of been punished with incidents in the past, like say Pete O'Mahony's red cards. So I think those are the ones you can probably control a bit more and be sensible with. Yeah.
I assume you haven't watched the game back yet in an analytical sense.
I've been trying to. It's been a pretty busy last couple of days. I'm about 20 minutes in, but I'm normally pretty slow in going back reviewing games. I suppose first half will be a lot longer than the second half to review because. But yeah, I'll do that maybe later today because it is important, I think, to flip the switch and move on and park things and take the learnings even from those games, because to be honest, it certainly wasn't our best performance as a team out there. We made sort of tough work of it. England were making life difficult for us. We're obviously making the breakdown a real fight and disrupted our attack and our flow. So I'll certainly watch it back and try take some learnings from it, and I'm sure we'll be reviewing it in the summer in any Irish camps we'll be back into. But
there obviously was a big tactical side to the game and what England brought to it. We're also wondering then, was there a nervousness around the game? Because like for so many of you, it was the biggest game you've ever played in. Did it feel different to anything that's gone before in your career in terms of importance, in terms of how you slept the night before?
I suppose it's about, like we talked about, like not playing the occasion, just playing the match. And I think it was a big focus for us through the week, and we did a lot of sort of mental prep on that side of things. And obviously nerves were very high for myself, and I'm sure the rest of the team. So yeah, that might have been a factor, but I suppose we're lucky enough to have a lot of experienced heads in the group. I've never really been in a final, so to say, for an Irish team, but certainly have experience from being in Leinster finals, whether the Pro 14 or Champions Cup. So it's about taking those sort of learnings in with us, and even treating the New Zealand Test Tour last year, the final series decider as a final. Even the Australia game in November, we tried to treat as a final to get ourselves used to those sort of occasions. And hopefully this Six Nations would be the same, take those learnings. We said Italy was the quarter, Scotland was the semi, and England was the final. And I think that was probably just to prep us for more things in the future as well. So they'll definitely be interesting in this campaign as well.
Because obviously players always talk of next game, which is always going to be the focus, but actually getting yourself into that tournament mindset of each game carries more importance, you'd have to feel if something is going to stand to you come the autumn.
Yeah, definitely. I think like the importance of putting in back-to-back performances is huge, and when you get into finals rugby, be it with Leinster or Ireland, you've got to do it, and certainly it's the only way to prepare is to go in with that sort of mentality to these tournaments.
I'm sure Johnny Sexton was devastated in the dressing room afterwards. He didn't get the Brian O'Driscoll style blimp after the match for the send-off. Like, he's been such a big part of every dressing room you've been in with Leinster, with Dublin, or with Leinster and with Ireland. Can you talk about him and that, what he's done for your career, how the influence he's had on your career?
He's been incredible. Like, he's such a good leader, obviously incredible player, but like he sets the standard in training, and obviously just drives you on. He's like having another coach out there, but he's nearly got a better feel for it in one sense, because he's still playing, he's still feeling the same things you are. So just to even learn off him on the training ground is so vital, and I think he's definitely been such a huge part to, I suppose, Leinster and Ireland's success. And then off the pitch as well, he's a great person to chat to and help me with a few, I suppose, through difficult times, and gave me hints and tips here and there. And it's great person to bounce a few few ideas off and how you're feeling off as well, because he's obviously got experience on his side, so you've got to utilize it as best you can.
You're talking to us today, you're with Energia launching their Think of the Possibilities campaign, which shines a light on the volunteers doing the invaluable on-scene work at grassroots level in Irish rugby. If people want to go on YouTube, you can search Think of the Possibilities, search Hugo Keenan, Energia, you'll be able to watch the video. In many ways, there's no better man to lead this when we think of the possibilities. I'm not sure if the stories of you being a sub on the C team at Blackrock when you were 14 are the stuff of urban legend or urban myth. There was a team sheet going around one of the coaching WhatsApp groups I'm in a couple of weeks ago, and you're named as number 21 in an under 14 C game against New Park. Was that a one-off, or was that your level at that stage?
No, that was my level as captain of the D's that year. Being on the bench for the C's was probably one of my highlights of that year. But no, I was a bit of a slow burner. Took a while to get going. I was quite small. I was big into soccer at that stage, but I also wasn't good enough. I didn't have the ability, and suppose just had to work on it, and gradually got onto the C's, then onto the seconds in fifth year, and finally made the first in my final year in school, making that SCT team. And yeah, it's all been a slow journey, but yeah, I didn't think.
Geez, like what a story! What an inspiration for kids of that age, because we live in a world now where that elite academy mindset is put into kids from 9-10 years of age. You need to be starting to hit the grades. You need to hit certain markers along the way to see that, somebody who's become such a key man for Ireland at senior level, that it wasn't that. At 14, it was still a bit of a struggle. When you reflect back as in the short time we have, who do you look back at? Were there key moments when you're 14, 15? Was it just a growth spurt at the right time? Were there people who said the right thing? Because it would be, you obviously had a talent, but it would be easy at 14 if you're captain of the D team, happy to be on the bench for the C team, to concentrate in soccer, to look elsewhere. What kept you going?
I suppose the love of the sport, love of both rugby and football. I always tried my hand at different sports. Obviously had a stint with sevens as well, and I think the combination of everything helped me develop probably different skill sets and gradually rise. And I suppose I never thought I'd be in this situation playing for Leinster and Ireland, but I always was determined to get on that next team, whether it's the Blackrock SCT team or the Leinster Irish under-20s. There was always a little stepping stones, and I always took a short-term view. So hopefully I can inspire a few of the younger generation not to give up, and to keep sticking at it and keep trying their hand at different sports and developing different skill sets to improve their game.
And a huge lesson as well, I think, for coaches and parents of kids of that age who, quite often maybe do look at the star players at 13 and 14 and think they're the ones who are going to make it, that actually there are unpolished gems out there who develop at different paces. We've done things with Fionn Fitzgerald recently around GAA and relative age theory and players developing at different times. It's a huge issue in so many sports of players just dropping out because they're that bit smaller or they're that bit more of a late developer. Like, again, such a prime example of give everybody a chance for as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, 100%. Like, there's always going to be late bloomers. So I think it's nearly getting too detailed from an early age and putting too much pressure on some kids. So I think just going out there, enjoying it, getting the kids self-motivated, which is a big thing, because ultimately they're the ones who are going to have to want to put in the hard yards. And I think that's built up through a long period of time as well. So it's probably interesting to look at all those stats and theories, but I don't think you should be looking at them if you're a kid or if you're parents worrying about kids' potential or anything like that.
Good soccer player.
Sorry?
Were you a good soccer player?
I was all right. I was a centre mid, but as I progressed on, I was moved slowly back into centre back. So now I was never gonna make it to the heights of a Premier League or anything like that. I just played for the local side. All my mates were big into soccer, and it was probably my first love. I still follow Chelsea. Still follow the Blackrock football team and get down to a lot of their games and watching it, because a lot of my mates are playing for the 1s, 2s and 3s down there. So it's a great up and coming club. So now enjoying getting down there.
Well, Hugo, it's been great to talk to you. Many congratulations again. What a brilliant success it's been. Not much of a rest. Ulster on Saturday week. What's the prognosis?
Yeah. What a big fixture for us. Like Champions Cup on the line. So trying to get back for that. And the lads have a good test on Friday against Stormers. And hopefully get back in the side for that Ulster game, because it's huge and great to be back in the Viva for that.
All right, great stuff,
Cheers,
Hugo.
Nathan.
And very best of luck in the autumn as well, if we don't get a chance to talk to you between now and the World Cup.
Thank you. Cheers. See you.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.